into land at Weston Road, Weston Lane. Gosh, it's getting
Road.
Weston Road, Ashbourne, Derbyshire. So this morning, I don't think we've got any admin to pick up on before we start.
I don't think so, ma'am.
No. So are you happy to continue your cross-examination?
I am, ma'am.
Mrs. Ford, thank you.
Good morning, Mrs. Ford.
Good morning.
If we can just go back to the local plan for a moment. One of the policies we didn't touch on yesterday was policy HC1. If you could just turn that up for me on page 72. I don't think there's anything between us on this, but let's make sure that that's the case, if that's all right. So paragraph 6.1, please. First of all, and what that tells us is that the spatial strategy sets out the broad approach for the distribution of developments, and then this section seeks to set out how the housing needs of the plan area to be met in detail, and in doing so, ensure that communities continue to be sustainable. So with that in mind, can we agree that the policies in this section actually address and give direction to the local planning authority, applicants and the inspector as to what we need to do to make sure that development remains sustainable?
Yes, this follows through the spatial strategy that's set out within the plan of the different settlement hierarchy.
Thank you. And then if we just go to policy HC1, and it's the third bullet point, you can see there that we're expressly directed, aren't we, to support housing development on unallocated sites in accordance with policy S2, which is the settlement hierarchy. Keep that in your mind, and then this is the question. It's right, therefore, isn't it, that in the circumstances prescribed by the local plan, that making housing available on sites such as the appeal site is inherently sustainable, because that's what the plan tells us to do. Can we agree that?
On the caveat that it obviously has to apply with other policies within the plan as well.
Thank you. Can we go to page 55, please, of the local plan? I just want to pick up ecology. Again, I don't think there's anything between us on this, but I just want to make sure that we deal with this. So page 55, policy PD3. If I can just ask you to go right down to the bottom, actually, it's the fifth bullet point on page 55, one up from the bottom, so penultimate, and it tells us there, this is in Mr. Hoy's evidence, and I don't take it to be in dispute, but it's right, isn't it, that what we need to do is look for a net overall gain. That's what the policy tells us.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And we can agree, can't we, that we're not in a mandatory net gain world here, are we? The Environment Act doesn't apply to this application and appeal.
Correct.
Thank you. So can we go to Mr. Hoy's evidence then, please, which is CD 7.11. And actually, can I just check, have you seen Mr. Hoy's errata?
Yes, I have.
Yeah,
yes.
okay, that's great, thank you. Again, I don't understand that to be in dispute. Have you seen it, ma'am? Yeah, I'm grateful.
Sorry, could I have the CD number?
Of course, 7.11.
Thank you.
If we could turn up paragraph 6.35 on page 12. Just want to run through a couple of points. So what Mr. Hoy is telling us here is that we've got qualitative benefits for biodiversity. So we're not using the language of net gain here. This is different, isn't it? Can we agree that? Yeah. And he tells us that on those qualitative net gains that we have significant benefits to ecology. Can we agree that's the case?
Yes.
And then if we go to paragraphs 9.9, please, and 9.10, so right to the end of his proof in the conclusion section is where I've found it easiest to find this. he tells us there that we have a 14.33% increase in biodiversity net gain. That's a significant benefit in itself, isn't it?
I think in my proof, I've actually given the BNG calculation a moderate gain.
Yes, well, you see, that's why I wanted to talk to you about it, because there isn't any other evidence other than Mr. Hoy's, and I don't understand that to be in dispute. So Mr. Hoy tells us that this is a significant benefit from the ecological perspective. So can we agree that it's a significant benefit as per Mr. Hoy's evidence?
So before she answers that, that's not what it says. It says it's significantly above the net loss requirement. He doesn't say it's a significant benefit. Or he says significant net gains underneath as well, but the word significant benefit I don't think are in that part of his proof anyway.
Can I just ask that the witness answer the question?
So in connection with the, Mr. Hoy clearly said there's a significantly above the no, not less requirement of national policy. And in my plan and balance, because this is all about planning balance, I attribute moderate weight to the BNG that's been provided on the site.
So can we go to paragraph 7.10, please? Of Mr. Hoy's evidence, because this is where it's been corrected. This is the errata point. It's the final sentence. Mr. Hoy says, the delivery of a significantly enhanced net gain over and above no net loss would, in my opinion, result in, and it should say, significant positive effects to biodiversity. So we can agree, can't we, that we've got significant benefits from qualitative and significant benefits from the actual BNG habitat perspective. So 2 different points, significant in both.
I think the difference here is that, Mr. Hoy, I'm giving my evidence on the overall planning balance. So I'm giving moderate weight to the provision of the BNG.
Yeah, and I'm asking you about Mr. Hoy's evidence. So can I have an answer to the question?
Mr. Hoy, in his original proof, gave it moderate positive benefits to biodiversity, and in his
yes, and it was a mistake.
And in his updated, which has been submitted subsequently, he has addressed that as being significant benefits. Yes.
So can we agree significant, because it was a mistake? The errata's not been challenged. I checked that before I asked the questions. So can we agree that it's significant on net gain?
On the point that in relation to the council's position, my understanding there is no dispute in connection with, or we're not giving any evidence in the contrary to Mr. Hoy's evidence.
Can I have an answer to the question?
In relation to the information that's been submitted, the council has not queried the fact that Mr. Hoy has put in, he's amended his position, but in my planning balance, that's a different issue.
Yeah. And I'm not asking you about your plan and balance yet. I'm asking you about Mr. Hoy's evidence.
Mr. Hoy's evidence has been amended to say it's a significant benefit.
Yeah. The other thing that's clear, isn't it, from Mr. Hoy's evidence is that the net gain and the qualitative benefits will actually be provided on site, won't they?
Yes.
And we've already heard as well at the inquiry that not only do we have significant gain, in Mr. Hoy's opinion, both qualitatively and quantitatively in terms of biodiversity net gain in habitat terms, but we're also offering a 30-year management plan to ensure that the habitat that's created is managed appropriately and can deliver additional benefits and gains. So that's another significant benefit, isn't it, Mrs. Ford?
That's a benefit to the scheme, but as I say in my proof, I basically set out in my planning balance, I've given moderate weight to that.
So where in your evidence, Mrs. Ford, do you even acknowledge that there is a 30-year management plan proposal here?
I do not.
I'm grateful. Right. Can we pick up your proof, please, and go to your table? So it's page 23, and it's the second row, first column. And we can see there quite clearly that what you've taken into account in your assessment, because it's what you tell us in black and white, is that there's a section 106 to secure delivery and maintenance of biodiversity net gain measures off-site. So we can agree, can't we, that you haven't taken into account the significant qualitative benefits.
In my approval, I apologise, I should have put on-site as well. That is an error on my part.
So that wasn't the question. You haven't taken account, have you, because you tell us in black and white, of the qualitative benefits. So this isn't net gain, this is about the qualitative benefits that Mr. Hoy say is significant.
No, I have not.
I'm grateful. You also haven't taken into account the 30-year management plan. And it's fair, isn't it, to say that once you take both of those into account, in addition to Mr. Hoy's evidence, unchallenged evidence about the significant gains to be made on net gain, so it's a separate point to the qualitative, and then the 30-year management plan that we don't have to provide because we're not in a net gain world in terms of the Environment Act, that means that they are significant benefits and they should be afforded significant weight, shouldn't they?
They are benefits to the scheme. I accept that, but I said I've given them moderate weight.
Okay, so you're sticking to your guns on moderate weight despite the fact that you haven't taken key issues into account?
Yes, I am sticking to that, yes.
Okay. Just bear with me for 1 second. Right, I don't know if you were here for all of Mr. Carey's evidence, Mrs. Ford, but there were a couple of policy points that I put to Mr. Carey, and I was either asked by the inspector to move them to you, or actually Mr. Carey asked me to put them to you, so I'm afraid that's what I'm going to have to do now. So bear with me, because it's like going back in a time warp to the week before yesterday. First of all, if we can go to policy HC19, please. So we're in the local plan CD 5.1, 93. So again, just some points of interpretation on policy, if I may. The first paragraph on paragraph policy HC19, what we're asked to do, just while I'm asking these questions, just please bear in mind that the appellant accepts that if there is a safety issue, then that is a very different thing. And obviously our primary case is that there isn't. So these points are put primarily on the accessibility point rather than safety, if that's okay, yeah. just to be clear. So first of all, the first paragraph, second line, we can see there that it's about minimising the need to travel, isn't it, not avoiding?
Yes.
And bullet point 1 tells us again, links back to how we will achieve this is by delivering sustainable patterns of development.
Yes.
And the strategic policies tell us how to do that, don't they, for the purposes of this plan?
Yes.
And that specifically says if you've got no 5-year supply, go to 1, 2 and 3 in your settlement hierarchy and go to the edge of the settlement.
As long as in accordance with other policies, yes. Yeah. And the NPPF.
Bullet 6 then, please, if you count down. We can see there, can't we, that what that's talking about is integrating new developments within existing or proposed transport infrastructure to ensure choice of transportation method and enhance potential accessibility benefits. Sorry, it's to further ensure choice. A couple of questions on that, please. This appeal scheme does integrate into existing highway infrastructure, doesn't it?
Well, the access goes on to the Western Road.
Yeah. So is that a yes?
Well, I caveat it because I'd say integrate it. I don't think it does integrate itself fully. There is one access onto the Wyston Road.
Yeah, but that's what's existing, isn't it? We can only work with what we've got.
Yes, but I think the issue is around how you access onto the other areas as well. So yes, I'm just making the point that there's only one access point to have accessibility.
Yeah, I think we're all clear on that. I'm just asking you about the wording of the policy and what it requires us to do. There's no dispute between us on the facts that there is an access from Wyston Road and that there aren't any footpaths connecting the development to any adjacent development. So you can effectively take that as read. That's clear and agreed between the parties. The question is it a problem? That's a separate issue. Mr. Lally and Mr. Carey have dealt with that, but I'm just asking you about policy interpretation. So then it tells us that we are looking for a choice of transportation method. Alternatives in terms of those choices can be buses, walking and cycling, can't they?
Yes.
And then it says to enhance potential accessibility benefits. Is it fair to say that a travel plan can achieve that?
A travel plan can achieve that so long as you've got the existing infrastructure in the first place.
Yeah.
So, for example, I think we heard that the bus services along the Wyston Road, they serve there's one an hour.
Yeah, I'm not seeking to go over any of Mr. Carey's evidence. I've dealt with accessibility with him. This is just about policy interpretation. Okay. So let me just double check my notes. I've got too many arrows pointing me in different directions. Now, in bullet 14, so the easiest way to find that is if you go into 93, and then if you count up from the bottom, it's the first one at the top of that page, actually. That's the easiest way to find it. No, scrap that. I've just misread my own notes. That's it. Yeah, there's just one point to clear up from your evidence in chief, which stood out to me, and I want to just double check that I got it right. I think you were asked whether the layout gives priority to car users, and your response was that it did. Where is that in Mr. Carey's evidence? Because you rely on him, don't you?
I do rely on, yes, I do. I think the question was around the car, pedestrians and cyclists, and my response was that it is the car. That's because obviously if you look at the actual sort of Spine Road itself, that is the largest area of surface, so therefore the priority would be the car.
Okay, right. But can we just agree that there are footpaths being provided as part of the scheme?
Absolutely,
okay,
yes.
Yeah.
I suppose how and she's not doing it, but if someone says to me the priority is the pedestrian cycle, then I'd look at a home zone sort of scheme, that type of thing.
Oh, so you're making a design point? Is that so? That's Mr. Lally's evidence that we're going over there, is it?
No, I'm just qualifying that. In my experience, when somebody asks about the priority that's given to anything, that's what I'm justifying the response that I have given.
But this is why I'm trying to understand, because priority to pedestrians versus cars is also about the design of the highway, isn't it? And that's what Mr. Carey's dealt with.
Yes.
And he hasn't raised any point of concern or raised any objection about the design of the scheme on that point, has he?
No, not at all. And I'm not responding
Okay.
to that. I'm just qualifying the fact that the question was posed about the priority that's being given. That's all.
Okay. Where is that in your evidence, Mrs. Ford?
It's not my evidence.
Another point in your evidence in chief was about DDA compliance, there was a point about, well, I'm not sure that's how it was put, actually. So can you stop interrupting my cross-examination, Mr. Hunter?
But if a question is going to put, it has to be put accurately. I didn't mention the DDA at all, ever. So I used the word inclusive design.
Just give Miss Ogley a chance to. Okay.
The specific note that I have of your evidence on this in chief, Mrs. Ford, is that you were taken to policy PD1. And then you were taken to the 8th bullet point. And you were asked questions about whether or not it was easy to move around, and you gave answers on that. And then you were asked about bullet point 10, about accessed and used by everyone, including disabled people. And then you said, we heard, due to the slope and gradients, that this will put people off who may have walking issues or disabilities. Do you recall?
I do, yes.
Yeah, I'm grateful. Mr. Carey agreed, didn't he, that the street that provides access for the development is DDA compliant, isn't it, in terms of its gradient?
Mum, I can't remember what Mr. Carey evidence was in that particular point. I'd have to go back to my notes if I made a note of that specifically.
Right. Well, I've put that point to you, Mrs. Ford. I've got notes. The inspector will have notes. It's not in Mr. Carey's evidence. It wasn't challenged. To the extent that you are claiming that there is any issue with DDA compliance, can we agree that that's not something that you're advancing?
I'm not advancing as
I'm
not
grateful.
DDA compliant, no.
Again, in your evidence in chief, you mentioned quad blocks. I'm not going over the ground on that. We dealt with the design exhaustively with Mr. Lally and Mr. Carr, so I'm not going back with that. Accessibility on other schemes, again, you were taken to in your evidence in chief. Can I just understand, you were taken to Appendix 1 of Mr. Bassett's evidence,
Yes.
and you made some comments on comparable accessibility between those developments and the appeal scheme.
Yes.
Yeah. That was not challenged by Mr. Carey, was it?
Not as far as I'm aware, no.
And you don't have any objective assessment of your own, do you, to rely on?
No, I've just looked at the plans which are included within the appendix, and I've given a response in response to the questions.
Yeah, okay. And so this is another question that I put to Mr. Carey, and he passed to you, I'm afraid. So you are a little bit stuck with this one, just to round this point off. Can we please go to the proposals map, CD 5.2? Let me know when you're there. You'll need to zoom in as well, just so you know.
Okay.
Okay, so if you zoom in to see the letters or the words Ashbourne CP, sort of some green hatching above it. And just immediately below that, we see 3 allocations, HC2, E, A and B, if you can spot those.
Yeah, so just bear with me, my computer. So on the proposals map, we have inset 5. and then we've
Inset
got
5, yeah.
Ashbourne, we've got another little plan there, haven't we? We've got 2 other little plans.
Yeah.
And then we've got the main, am I looking at the inset plan, sorry?
So if you see the box where it says the Ashbourne inset, underneath that,
Yes.
you've got, or to the right immediately, you've got Ashbourne CP in writing, if you can see that. Have you got it? Do you want me to come and point it out for you to help? Yeah, of course.
Only because I think it's my system probably more so than,
Thing getting in your way again.
yeah.
Okay, so we're here.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so if you zoom in there, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Down a little bit, there you go.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
very
no
much.
worries.
Thank you.
Just a short point, but in terms of this settlement and options, it's fair, isn't it? These are allocations, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And it's fair to say, isn't it, that if anything, they'll be less well located to Ashbourne itself than the appeal site, won't they?
Mum, I don't know the sites well enough in order to make a comment on that. I haven't assessed them.
Thank you. I'll ask Mr. Bassett to deal with that. We can put that away. In respect of landscape, can we just turn up page 51, please, of the local plan? Yeah, are we there? So we know that there's nothing between us on policy PD5. That's correct, isn't it?
Sorry, page 51 is the design and placemaking.
Oh, sorry. It's because there's a bullet in there as well. It's bullet 4, so it's policy PD1, bullet 4, and it's policy PD5. They're linked to landscape character.
Sorry.
No, that's my fault. But I don't think there's anything between us on that. We know that there's no landscape impact case being made here, don't we?
Yes.
So we do know as well then, don't we, by default, that the scheme is going to protect and enhance landscape character because it meets the terms of the policy.
I say the council are advocating no issue of harm on the landscape at all.
And we know that we're going to be providing significant amounts of new planting and landscaping in the region of 6,000 trees, shrubs and other plants. And again, that's a significant benefit for landscape, isn't it?
In connection, well, obviously that is as part of the mitigation of the schemes. So as part of mitigation, yes, I agree that there are a number of individual trees, there are different hedgerows. I'm an expert on trees, so I'm not going to a tree or a shrub, but I accept that there are quite a lot of landscaping is going to be developed as part of the scheme.
That's helpful, thank you. And in terms of Mr. Jackson's evidence, he told us that actually what some of that landscaping will do is actually result in a benefit for existing views across the valley, because what it's going to do is help screen the Red Road development. So again, that's not been challenged, so we can agree that that's a benefit of the scheme, can't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, Mr. Lally agreed, didn't he, that in terms of the direct approach to the site on Wyeston Road, so after the A52, Mr. Lally agreed that the development will provide a significantly better fair face than what's currently there.
I think certainly that it will be an improvement, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we can agree it's an improvement. The question between us is whether or not it's significant.
Yes.
Where can I find that you've given any of that any weight in your planning balance, please?
in connection with as I've set out it in my evidence, the actual landscape, I haven't referred to the benefit of the landscape that would be attributed to the site.
Thank you. Then moving on to where I think we're getting to, the final hurrah, thankfully. I'm sure you're pleased to hear, Mrs. Ford. Can we agree that even if the council is able to demonstrate a housing land supply of 4.01 years, that's not properly characterised as a minor undersupply?
My view on that housing land supply is that council has admitted it has got a 5-year housing land supply, and there have been various appeal decisions which then basically say the extent of a land supply, whether it's significant or not. My view is that if a council doesn't have a 5-year housing land supply, it doesn't have one, and the various degrees, whether it's 1 or 5, in my view, it doesn't make an issue. But I know there's different appeal decisions have given rise to that, so therefore we have got into that. But my view is very clear that a 5-year housing supply, council doesn't have one.
Yeah, that's helpful, thank you. And I don't think there's anything between us, is there, that this scheme can make a sizable contribution within the 5-year period to both market and affordable housing? We can agree that.
So long as it's being delivered, yes, of course.
Yes, of course, yeah. But there's no case here, is there, about the deliverability of the scheme? Obviously, we've got to get planning permission first.
Exactly, yeah. And also, I think one of the key issues is to make sure that a safe access can be provided.
Yeah, of course, and that's sort of one of the biggest issues between us. And I'm not asking you to sort of, give away the farm on that. I appreciate that's the council's case, and we fundamentally disagree on that. But that's very helpful. So again, we can agree, can't we, in the overall planning balance that we've got express policy support from the local plan on policy S1, S2, S4, lowercase Roman numeral, and HC1.
Well, this is where we have a difference, because obviously from the council's case is very clear, the council does not have a 5-year housing land supply. There is a policy within the plan which allows development within the countryside, which when it is adjacent to a settlement boundary, if it complies with other policies within the plan and the NPPF. And obviously, from the evidence that the council is putting forward, there is a failure to do so. So therefore, I can't agree that there is compliance with those respective policies within the plan.
Yeah, I guess that's just a subtle distinction in language, because I think the question is that the appeal scheme has in principle policy support from those policies, doesn't it? And then you say yes, but there are technical reasons why it shouldn't get permission.
Correct.
Yeah. And again, if the inspector prefers the evidence of Mr. Price and the evidence of Mr. Carr, then there's nothing between us, is there? It's quite clear that planning permission should be granted, whether that's on the tilted balance or whether it's the development plan policies.
Obviously, if the inspector agrees with the evidence and considers that safe access can be provided, there is no impact or there's no accessibility issues, there's no issues of design, then yes, if the inspector agrees with all of those points, then that would meet the criteria of respective policies, yes.
Yeah, that's helpful. And then just if we can do a little tidy up maybe on the statement of common ground. I didn't know whether this might be helpful so that we all are clear on where we stand. But if we just go to section 6 and the areas of disagreement, this is just you could do this with the decision notice. This is just where I found it most helpful to do, update the position.
Apologies, sorry.
Of course,
I need the
CD number,
thank you.
7.4.
Thank you. Thank you.
I need to post it. Are we there?
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. So if you just go to section 6, as I understand the case now from the council, on the first paragraph, number 1, what we'd need to do is basically strike through everything from the word "and" to the word "network." Can we agree that?
Yeah, sorry, just bear with me.
Of course.
No, sorry, it's not your, my laptop does very strange things. And I have no idea why it does it. I'm sorry, I'm there, sorry.
Don't
sorry,
worry.
yeah, so the first paragraph, will not permit access. Sorry, did you say we would delete the third sentence?
So it was, no, so everything from the word "and" through to the word "network." So we would keep whether or not the proposed access would be detrimental to highway safety, that would be retained, but we would delete the words, given the concessions made by Mr Carey, and whether cumulatively with other recent developments in the area, the scheme would have severe impacts on the transport network.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And again, just to round it off, number 3, we just delete in its entirety now, don't we?
Yes, that's correct.
And number 5, we delete in its entirety, don't we?
Yes, because that's no longer being considered.
Yeah. That's very helpful. Mrs Ford, those are all the points I have for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mrs Ford.
Good morning.
Nearly on the home straight, just a few more questions, not a lot. First one is a question you asked yesterday about policy S2 in the local plan. It may help to turn it up if you have it to hand. If you don't, it may probably not necessary to go to it, but as you wish.
Yes.
And it was put to you that development in first-tier settlements is sustainable, and you agreed. Simple question, is the development in a first-tier settlement?
No.
Secondly, does it follow from the fact that the plan deems sites within first-tier or other tier settlements to be sustainable? Does it follow that that a development on the edge of such settlements must also be sustainable?
No.
Thank you. Next question was about, a bit longer on this one, about the local plan allocations and the issue of there only being 14 counted in the dwellings in the 5-year supply. And there was a series of questions on that. And I think the first of which was, if there are only going to be 14, I think Mr Roberts says 0 in the, so Mr Roberts' position is 0, Mr Hayes' position is 14 in that particular component of supply. Put to you that if there is only 14 coming from local plan allocations, there's a chronic and acute problem with housing delivery. And you said, my note was, well, it depends on what went before, and then there was a lot more cross-examination about it. I think I'm going to just take a moment of this to go over what so we're clear about what's in the evidence on it. Could you take up Mr Hayes' proof, first of all? And
Sorry, could I have the CD reference?
oh gosh, no, I'm afraid it's 7 point something or other. I'll have to look that up for you.
I was looking at that.
Thank you very much, that's helpful.
I think that was sent. That was sent after I downloaded all of the CD documents. So I've got it saved somewhere else. So just bear with me.
Okay, well, to be honest, I'll leave you to put it aside for the moment because I think I can do it. I think if Ms Ogney doesn't mind me leading on it, because it's also in the document that she showed to you, the earlier version of the statement of common ground on housing land supply we saw. I think it was originally 138. So if I may lead, and if you tell me,
I've got. Let's just get it done.
Yeah. So the position was Mr Hayes. The council's position originally was 138 in that category, which was taken from the AMR.
Yeah.
And then Mr Hayes, the process that's been gone through is Mr Hayes, in response to what the appellant said about the lack of clear evidence on those sites, has reduced it to 14, whereas Mr Roberts says that means you should reduce it to 0, as I understand it. I think is uncontroversially the position. Could I just ask you to go then next to the framework, please? So that's core document 5.5 and the glossary in that and the definition of deliverable.
So what page number?
Oh gosh, again, just give me bear with me a moment, 'cause
Sorry.
I've just found it. Towards the back, so I can say at the moment, page, thank you very much, you're much quicker and effective than I am with the PDFs. So yeah, page 69, thank you. Okay, and so we see there, I think the inspector read a part of it or most of it out earlier on, the general definition of deliverability at the start in the first 3 lines, and then we see in particular, and then there's A and B. And those are, again, I think, if I may lead on this, what people have been referring to and commonly do refer to as category A and category B.
Yeah.
And the first category are cases where there is an assumption that sites are deliverable unless there's clear evidence that homes won't be delivered in 5 years. And conversely, in category B, there's a list of cases where you assume the opposite, that they're not deliverable unless there is clear evidence that housing completions will begin on site within 5 years. You see that?
Yeah.
Which category do local plan allocations fall in? Without
The allocations will fall within category B if they're allocated within a plan.
So, in order for them to be considered deliverable, what is needed?
For them to be considered, they would have to have planning permission.
No, sorry, different question. I'm asking you different questions. Just look at category B.
Yes,
In
sir.
order to treat a site that's within category B, for example, an allocation in a local plan
Yes.
without planning permission,
Yeah.
what is needed in order for it to be considered deliverable?
It should be only deliverable where there's a clear evidence that housing completions will begin on site within 5 years.
Thank you. Okay, can I ask you this question? If the council's conceded that 124 dwellings need to be taken out of that particular category because there isn't clear evidence, does the absence of clear evidence to demonstrate that housing completions will begin imply that there won't be any housing completions?
No.
Thank you. Can you turn next then, please, to core document 6.3, which is one of the AMRs. I think from the 2019-2020. Mr. Roberts and Mr. Bassett say in their note in their proof that from this year, 2019 to date, the council's AMRs have never shown a full 5-year supply, which is correct. And I just want to look at this. This is the first year where we see that. So if you go to page 16, do you have that at the table,
Yes.
table 4? So we can see the housing requirement 284 overall, the various variations on that, and we see. So I think we see. I can't know. There it is. I'm sorry. Yes, 16 going over to 17. The 5-year supply dipped under 5 there. I think it's at 4.61. Sorry, it's not. I've written over the top of it. I think it's 4.61.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And can you see over the page then, on page 18, the revised trajectory?
Yes.
Okay. You tell it. Just ask you this question in relation to the last AMR year that we have. Was the trajectory predicting that the housing requirement in the local plan of 284 would be met or not met?
So, it was basically saying that it would not be met.
Okay, thank you. Can we have a look then next to Mr. Roberts' evidence, please? Because Mr. Roberts helpfully puts them all together. And in his evidence of completion, so that was what was predicted to be delivered in 2019, 2020, or 2020 when we're looking forward. If you look at Mr. Roberts' proof, and I'll try and give you the CD number.
Thank you.
It's 7.9.
Yes, I've got that.
I think he gives it, so if I can give the, yeah, it's, if you've got that then, if you go to page 27,
So is it 27 on the electronic or the?
no, it's the internal numbering. In
Okay,
the
that's fine,
electronics,
thank you.
it's 30. In the PDF, it's 30. Do you have that?
Yeah.
So we saw in the 2019-2020 AMR, what was predicted was, I think, 208 dwellings in 22-23. What was actually delivered in 22-23?
286.
Was that above or below the housing requirement in the local plan?
That was above.
Thank you. Does the table that we have there show that the housing, that the actual housing delivery has ever fallen below the housing requirement in the local plan since the plan was adopted?
No.
Thank you. We know the standard method local housing need figure for this authority is 217, so a fair way below the housing requirement. Has the local planning authority ever come close to not meeting that since the plan was adopted?
No.
Thank you. Could you go to staying with Mr. Roberts' evidence? Could you go to please to page 21? You have that. You see it, paragraph 4.6 here, Mr. Roberts says, is the forecast delivery in the local plan over the period 2017-18 to 2022-23. So a 5-year period from the, basically from the adoption, around the adoption date of the local plan, was 3,317. The completion figure for the same date is 2155. Can I just ask you to do a little bit of maths?
I hate maths.
So take your time with it. Take your time with it. What I'm going to just ask you, so we know in the first 5 years of the plan period, basically, that there has been a delivery of 2,000. I think it's put. He says that the completion figure for that period was 2,155 dwellings. How much would, in terms of, if we consider the standard method figure of 217 per annum, how many years would supply would 2,155 amount to?
I will have to use my calculator.
Go on then.
9.9 years.
Thank you. So, you said, so going back to the question you asked about what the figure, the fact that the local plan allocation component in the 5-year supply calculation in Mr. Hayes or Mr. Roberts' evidence is either 0 or 14, and whether that shows a chronic or acute problem with housing delivery. And you said, well, it depends on what goes before. Having looked at what's gone before, is there a chronic or acute problem with housing delivery in this authority?
No.
Thank you. Okay, then turning to cross-examination this morning and the questions you were asked, it was put to you that you hadn't taken into account all of the biodiversity benefits in shore, in particular qualitative improvements and the 30-year management plan. And I think you said at the end of it still, in your planning assessment, you still gave it moderate weight.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Could I ask you to go to your proof, please, and the table where you summarise the weight that you attach to various factors. So that's on page 23. Could Can I just ask what your intent, so if we go to the relevant bit of it under the environmental section, section 106, to secure delivery and maintenance of biodiversity and net gain measures off-site, you accepted that didn't refer to other aspects of biodiversity benefit. Can I just ask what your intention was? You provided a table with some quite short extract. Were you intending to just deal with one aspect of biodiversity, that the section 106 to secure delivery and maintenance of biodiversity net gain measures off-site, or was that the only thing that you were intending that to refer to, or were you intending to refer to anything else?
I think in pulling the table together, my view was to try and sort of assisting in setting out in summary the key aspects of the planning balance that I've taken into account. So also I've taken into account the issues that related to the Section 106, the securing delivery of diversity, net gain measures. So all of those things I had put it within that table to assist the inquiry.
Okay. Do you have a copy of the section 106?
No.
Could a copy be passed to you, please? Well, Ma'am, I can't remember what inquiry document number it was. Sorry, I missed off writing that. But thank you very much, Mr. Bassett. Could you just go within that, please, to the third schedule, headed biodiversity net gain?
Not a page number, sorry.
Sorry, it's towards the end.
All right, thank you.
Fine. Okay, so.
Sorry, I've got to go part
So
one.
I'll try and come back. So there's a number of schedule. It's about 5 pages from the end, or at least it wasn't my copy.
Got a first schedule, second schedule,
Third.
and I have.
Have we got a paper copy, I'm afraid?
Oh, sorry.
Perhaps if
Let me just on the so I'll let on my. No, apologies. I haven't got a third schedule.
Could you take that back? Give her that. And I've opened it on mine. It's an unmarked copy of it. I've got a fairly unthumbed through copy of it.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Okay. So I'm sorry. I think it's. I'm doing this blind now, but in the third schedule there, in paragraph 1.2, I think, or clause 1.2, there is a reference to a 30-year management plan. Is there? Not?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. Could you just keep that to one side and then go back to Mr. Hoy's evidence, core document 7.11. Have you got that?
Yes.
Could you go with it to page 9, paragraph 6.8, please? There's reference there to, despite there being no legal or policy requirements, proposed sympathetic management of all habitats will be completed for an extended 30-year period consistent with the requirements of statutory net gain. And then it goes on to say significant benefits in the long term. See that?
Yes.
Could I just question, the 30-year period and the management, sympathetic management being referred to there, is that something the same as or something different from what's referred to in clause 1.2 of the Schedule 3 of the 106, as far as you understand it?
It's the same.
Okay. So if you took into account the Section 106, what's the answer to whether or not you took into account the 30-year management plan?
That's included.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You put that to one side. Just a couple more questions then, or in fact, one more question. So you asked towards the end of cross-examination this morning about priority to car users, what you said about that in your evidence in chief and how the layout prioritises car users. And I think you mentioned Mr. Carey. You were asked to identify where that is in Mr. Carey's proof. Could you take Mr. Carey's proof up, please? And when you have that, please could you go to page 13? You got that? Thank you.
Yeah.
And then within that, paragraph 5.54, so the penultimate paragraph, with regard to connecting the development street layout to the surrounding area, manual for streets says ... What does that say about layout and car use?
It's, 5.4.
Yes, with
Yeah.
regard to connecting the development street layout to the surrounding area.
Yeah.
And there's a reference to manual
Yes.
streets.
Yeah.
Equipment,
Yeah. The area also needs to be properly connected with the adjacent street networks. A development with poor links to the surrounding area creates an enclave which encourages movement to and from it by car rather than other modes. With only one confirmed link to the surrounding area via an unlit footpath, the development can only be considered to be poorly connected.
Thank you for clearing that up. Thank you, ma'am. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Ford. Mr. Bassett, if you want to get set up, can I just ask one question just of both advocates? The reason for refusal, just a point Ms. Ogley brought up. So reason for refusal 1, you were nodding to this about the deletion of, oh, hang on, no, perhaps it's slightly different. The and cumulatively severe impacts on the highway network. Is that being withdrawn, that part of the reason for refusal?
My recollection of Mr. Carey's evidence was he said there's impact, but it's moderate. So we're not asserting severe impact.
No longer a reason for refusal?
It's no longer a reason for refusal.
Okay.
It's an impact. It's an impact.
Okay, thank you. So that's not something you're looking for me to look at in detail or determine?
No,
I mean,
I think
obviously it comes into balance potentially, but in terms of if I was looking at my main issue, it's
If
going
there's
to be
only-
the access that's the main.
If you were to conclude
determinant.
that there is a moderate impact in line with what Mr. Carey said, but there is safe access, we would not be suggesting refusal on highway grounds.
I see, yeah. But it all comes into the balance conversely on the other side. Okay. And you're happy with that?
I certainly am, ma'am.
Yeah. Lovely, okay. Shall we take a quick adjournment then just to change seats and then we'll crack on?
Yes.
So if we come back at 10:40, 10 minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
Bassett formally to the inquiry.
Thank you.
Right, exam evidence in chief, please, when you're ready.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're a chartered member of the Royal Town Planning Institute, is that correct?
Yes.
You hold a BA Honours degree and postgraduate diploma in Town and Regional Planning from the University of Sheffield, and you're a director of Freeds LLP in the Planning and Environment Group, is that correct?
That's correct.
You've got over 20 years experience working in planning. Prior to joining Freeds in 2015, you spent 12 years working as a local authority planner at Broxton Borough Council and Nottingham City Council, and you've been a member of the Royal Town Planning Institute since 2005, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
The evidence that you've prepared and provided for this appeal is true to the best of your knowledge and has been prepared and given in accordance with the guidance of your professional institute, is that correct?
That's correct.
Are these your true and professional opinions?
They are.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett. Apologies. The wrong book, that's why it doesn't make sense. First of all then, can we consider please the principle of development? If I can just ask you to go to paragraphs 5.14 and 5.20 of your proof. We're going to take your evidence as read, but we might sort of be nipping in and out to certain parts of it. So if I can just ask you to give your overview please of the principles, the policies that relate to the principle of development, how you say they're relevant and how you say they're complied with, in particular with regard to policies HC1 and S4 of the development plan.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so as we've heard already quite a lot in the inquiry, CHC1 and S4 makes provision for circumstances where the local authority can't demonstrate a 5-year housing supply. And it states that sites adjacent to settlement boundaries or settlements within 1 to 3 of the hierarchy will be considered suitable for development, subject to other considerations in the local. These policies are the most important policies in my mind to the principle of development. Ashbourne, as we know, is a highly sustainable settlement at the top tier of the hierarchy, so tier 1, and the local plan identifies that Ashbourne, together with the other tier 1 towns, are of primary focus for growth and development. The provision of this policy, or provision of this requirement in the policy to look at sites and major settlements in the instances where there's no 5-year supply is absolutely critical to the local plan, and was a point that the local plan inspector dealt with in some detail in their report. And it's simply to provide flexibility to the local plan in instances where local plan allocations have failed to deliver the rate that were intended.
So on that basis, we could say that the inspector who examined the plan had a very keen sense of prescience in predicting that this may well be needed. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Just this point about in examination in chief of see, I've done it now. We do use them interchangeably. I've not even noticed. Sorry, Mark. In evidence in chief from Mrs. Ford and re-examination, points been put about the interpretation of policy 2 and about this site not being in a first-tier settlement. Can you just give me your view on what's your position on that, and how do you say it's relevant or otherwise, please?
So the position quite clearly is that it's adjacent to, and that's what the policy requires. So the policy allows sites that are adjacent to the settlement.
So in your view, does anything turn on this?
No, it's supported.
And when we're thinking about whether or not we're considering, in terms of principle of development, are we relying upon the policies of the development plan or the tilted balance, or is it a combination of both? Can you just help us with the correct approach on the tests?
Yeah. For instance, as set out as a statutory requirement, we look at the development plan So in the first instance, our case is relies on the development plan, and we comply with the development plan in terms of policies that are local. However, if the inspector was minded to have a different view of certain aspects of the appeal proposal, we also benefit from the tilt and balance and the power of the NPPF. So the way I see it is we make an assessment against the development plan, and if we comply with all the requirements of the development plan, we get permission. If there is some conflict with any elements of the development plan, tilt and balance scenario, this is what is weighed at that point.
Thank you. In terms of the contribution that this appeal scheme is able to make to the 5-year supply shortfall, Mr. Bassett, can you just give your view on that and how you afford weight or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good size scheme contributing towards 5-year supply deficits because it's the size of 87 dwellings means that there's not a significant amount of infrastructure to get the site going, and it should be completed within the 5-year supply. Within the 5-year period. Actual way to the benefits of the scheme in that respect.
And with respect to the extent of the shortfall, Mr. Bassett, obviously we've heard from Mrs. Ford this morning on that. Whether it's 3.01 years supply or 4.01 years supply, I think that's now the numbers between us. How do you characterise the extent of the shortfall, please?
Yeah, I think my understanding is that the panel's position is 3.07. That is a significant shortfall in 2 years rather than the required level. And again, fits into the way argument towards the scheme to remedy in-house supply.
And if the council's case prevails, what's your position?
There's obviously a magnitude of change of weight to be given on how much the deficit is, but the position will change significantly. It will still afford substantial weight.
Thank you. Mrs. Ford, in cross-examination, accepted that the shortfall in supply, and that's the way that the question's put, the shortfall in supply, as per the 5-year housing land supply agreed position. She agreed that that was both chronic and acute. That was both for market and affordable housing. Your proof of evidence at table 1 at page 20, do you have any comments to make on that? What's your view, please?
Yes, thank you. So table 1 shows what's been a decreasing trend of housing supply. So at the start of the plan period, 2017-18, there was a healthy supply which we expected in adoption of the plan. But it's reduced almost year on year. There was a slight increase 21-22, but nothing material. So we're seeing this ever increasing, decreasing supply of housing. I think there's a couple of points about how that could potentially be remedied. Short answer is that we've heard, even by the council's figures, there is only 14 dwellings in the local plan allocations for the next 5 years. I've never seen a figure as low as that in terms of housing supply for a 5-year period, 14 dwellings from local plan sites, which tells me that the local plan allocation system is failing, which increases the weight even more, that benefits even more of our scheme, schemes like our scheme, because the local plan does put that flexibility in there. So if the local plan allocations aren't coming forward in the next 5 years, sites like the appeal sites are absolutely critical.
And then, so in terms of remedies, obviously you've just dealt with the allocations, but another remedy could be a new local plan to deliver new allocations. What's your position on that, Mr. Bassett?
Yeah, I mean, we're somewhere off the new local plan, as we heard yesterday. I think we've got a fair stage consultation going on at the moment. I think it started on the 9th of May and it runs to the 20th of June, which is likely to be an options consultation, but it is extremely limited in its scope. It's not before the inquiry, so I won't go into massive detail on it, but it's just like an 8-page leaflet about protected housing numbers, etc. So we're, I think, at least 2 years off adoption of a plan. So adoption of a new local plan is not going to remedy supply in the short term.
In light of that, and again, we've already mentioned this, but just around the point of, in light of both of those points that the allocations aren't coming forward, there is no new local plan. What is it that the plan tells us we need to do?
Grant sites on the edge of sustainable settlements like Ashbourne, such as the Peel site.
Moving on then to reason for refusal 1, it's fair to say, isn't it, that you rely on the evidence of Mr Price.
That's correct.
You've heard his evidence and you've heard the evidence from Mr Carey. I think you've been here throughout, Mr Bassett.
I have, yeah.
Yeah. Any reason to change your views based upon the evidence that you've heard at the inquiry?
Not one.
With respect to reason for refusal 2, sustainability, just that again primarily is dealt with by the evidence of Mr Carey and Mr Price, but just a policy question. In policy terms, is sustainability limited to accessibility?
No.
What else does it include?
It includes all manner of things. Relationships and settlements, accessibility to services that we've spoken about, design. It's a broad church of issues.
Thank you. And in your appendix 1, you set out some information about permissions on the other side of the A52, to the east of our sites, going up to effectively the defensible boundary that the A52 provides. Is there anything that you want to draw to the attention of the inquiry about Appendix 1?
The point that I was making in my evidence was that permissions have been granted very close to the appeal site. We know the Red Rose scheme to the north has been talked about extensively during this inquiry, and other sites as well. And I think actually the best plan to see that, if you were to go to the market, is actually in our statement of case document, figure 1. So our statement of case document is CD 7.1, and it's figure 1 on page 6. And the general point I was trying to make was that Ashbourne as a settlement is inherently sustainable. You've had quite significant growth to the north and east of the appeal site over the past sort of 5 or 6 years. And I don't see anything that is materially different in terms of the broad sustainability credentials of our appeal site to those of the recent years.
Reason for refusal 3, we know that's withdrawn, so I don't think we need to that. Reason for refusal 5, so this layout design, you rely upon the evidence of Mr Carr, is that correct?
That's correct.
Having heard the evidence of Mr Lally and Mr Carr at the inquiry, have you any reason to change the conclusions in your evidence, Mr Bassett?
No, I thought Mr Carr gave a real comprehensive explanation of the design and quality of the scheme, so that endorses my conclusion that the scheme meets relevant policy in both the local plan and the MPPO.
With respect to the evidence of Mr Jackson, of course, that wasn't particularly anticipated at the time you wrote your proof, Mr Bassett, because it came after. Obviously, we've addressed with Mrs Ford this morning Mr Jackson's position. What weight do you give to Mr Jackson's evidence and the relevance or otherwise of policy PD5?
Yeah, I mean, when I produced my evidence, landscape wasn't sort of a disputed point, so I've not expressly siphoned it off within my evidence. really should be two ways. But listening to the evidence of Mr. Jackson, I agree that there is going to be some benefits to how the scheme, how the appeal site and the Redrow scheme is seen together. And I think there will be some mitigating factors to the Redrow scheme, which from my side is sort of sits quite prominently on the side. So I think there is some benefit to that. It could well be significant, but the benefit of time of mature practice.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett. Reason for refusal 7 we don't need to go to because it's been withdrawn. Let's just pick up then, please, affordable housing, if we may. Can we go to Mr. Roberts' proof of evidence, please? CD 7.9. If we can just go to, I think we deal with this it's table 6 and 7 predominantly of Mr. Roberts' proof, I think. And there's also the latest evidence on affordable housing need, I think, in CD 6.10, so you might need to have a hand in that. Can you just give us an overview on what's the existing need, and then how is that being met by current delivery? And then what's the delivery from the scheme, and then what's the wait?
Yeah, fine. So, as Mr. Roberts sets out in his evidence, the current affordable housing requirement figure based on a local plan is 96 dwellings per annum. Just pause there because the latest Derbyshire shows evidence on affordable need, which presumably is going to inform their new local plan, to 226 dwellings per annum. Hence, the original figure is set out in the local plan. Mr. Roberts explains that there's a shortfall of 242 dwellings over a 6-year monitoring period, which means that just 58% of the requirement has been delivered.
Sorry, and that's against the requirement in the plan, so that's the lower number.
That's the lower number, that's the 96. Yeah. What you can see from Mr. Roberts' table, and this is true for the housing more generally, is in the years of the plan is there or thereabouts against the requirement, and then there's a significant drop off from 2019 to 20 onwards, so the last 4 years. We've got affordable housing delivery completions of 35, 28, 53, and 25 against the requirement of 96. Against this emerging requirement, which is not been tested as yet, but emerging 226 per annum. The scheme will deliver 26 affordable units, and context of what's been delivered over the previous years, I think that should be given substantial weight.
Just moving on then to sort of the final toss-up, if you like, of planning balance and benefits, Mr. Bassett. Can I just understand from you, are there any other benefits that we've not touched upon that you wanted to draw attention to? In particular, can I ask your views about the difference between yourself and Mrs. Ford on the ecology benefits?
Yes, I attach significant weight to the ecology benefits of the scheme, which is the sort of amalgamation of the net biodiversity gain, which at 14%, what you need to be doing, in my view, is judging against what the policy requirement is, which is a single net gain. So 14%, in my mind, is significant, and I agree with Mr. Horner's conclusions on that. And also, he's identified some qualitative improvements as well, and that also informs my weighting of significant benefit.
And any comment on the 30-year management plan?
30-year management plan will, of course, be something that's required on sort of mandatory BNG through the legislation, but we're providing it anyway as part of our package of ESG improvements, so that will feed into the inclusion of significant weight.
So just to be clear on that, is that mitigation?
No.
Is it a policy requirement?
No.
If we just turn up Mrs. Ford's table, it seems to be the most popular document of the last 2 days. Always very helpful. Let's just run through this. So in terms of the social element, just so that we're clear, where do you say the differences are, Mr. Bassett?
So I've actually used the term substantial weight. I don't think there's a debate about what the difference is between significant and substantial. I suppose in my own mind I would say perhaps slightly more significant, but there's not a massive difference between the two, I would say. Creating a high quality environment, we have to maintain.
Sorry, Mr. Bassett, just try and keep, you're a little far away from the mic now, sorry. No, it's okay, it's because you turn into the document instead of your laptop.
So just to clarify, on the social side, in terms of housing supply, that's a substantial way. It's for a significant positive place, so it's not massively that much expensive. Do you want me to go through each of the points in Ms. Ford's table?
Yeah, I mean, if you could go through the points and either give your viewers to what you say the weight is, and or identify any elements that you say are missing and need to be included in any sections.
So creating a high quality environment, Ms. Ford has identified that as significant weight. I don't expressly state that in my proof. In terms of a broader range, in terms of compliance with the global plan, some of the schemes of this plan, I attach significant weight to that. Ms. Ford says significant negative weight, which I completely disagree with based on the evidence of Mr. Carr. In terms of environmental benefits, and I do appreciate that Ms. Ford writing this table probably didn't have the benefits of my proof, so it's understandable that there's some differences. In terms of accessibility, I attach moderate weight, moderate positive weight, of course, whereas Mrs. Ford attaches significant negative weight, which again I disagree with based on the evidence of Mr. Price. We just touched upon the fact that significant weight should be given to the ecology benefits, biodiversity, qualitative, and again.
Just to be clear, just on that, of course, we see that Mrs. Ford's reference to net gain measures off site. What was the position before your evidence, Mr. Bassett, with regard to any provision off site? Has there been any change?
I think at some point in the process there was potential for some BNG to be provided off site as a potential possibility, but Mr. Hoy's evidence, which would have been submitted, I think, before Mrs. Ford finalised her evidence, confirmed it would go off site.
I'm grateful.
As we heard, Mrs. Ford has attributed moderate weight. Then moving on to the economic benefits.
So just before you move on to economic, where would the benefits that Mr. Jackson's identified on landscape sit in this, and what do you attribute to that?
Yeah, I think it would fall in the environmental category. As I say, it's going to help not only with the assimilation of the proposed scheme on the appeal side, but also the red road schemes that would fall within the environmental category. And I'm prepared to give that significant weight.
Thank you. And then there's nothing between your economic weight or economic benefits and the weight to be afforded to that now. Obviously, I think Mrs. Swart was very fair and said that, you know, actually Mr. Bassett's evidence affords moderate weight to that, not significant. Is that the case?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
And then financial, where are we on that in terms of your evidence, Mr. Bassett?
Effectively, that was wrapped in with my economic benefits.
Yeah.
It was just sort of one way, yeah. I'm not distinguishing between the two.
Yeah, okay. Is there anything else that you want to draw to the inspector's attention on benefits?
I think just give one point, it's okay with yesterday, and just as far as evidence is and 5.62 of my proof, where I say, as part of the benefits of delivering housing on the site and in the context of inadequate supply, I attribute significant weight to the housing mix proposed. And that's for four number of reasons, as it's set out in my proof. I can explain in some detail if you like.
Please do.
Yeah, fine. I mean, it's been partly informed by some of the work that Mr. Roberts is running on them, principally. The housing mix, in my view, contributes to a number of the objectives in paragraph 63 of the MPPF. It sets out all different sort of housing needs for different groups.
Do we need to turn that up, paragraph 63 MPPF?
Yeah, happy to do so, yeah. Quote is in my proof, but yeah, happy to go to it.
Whichever reference you want, Mr. Bassett, I don't mind. I'm happy for you to go away.
So, for context then, I'll just briefly read what paragraph 63 says, which says, within this context of establishing need, the size, type and tenure of housing needed for different groups in the community should be assessed and reflected in local policies. These groups should include, but not limited to, those who require affordable housing, families with children, older people, students, people with disabilities, service families, travellers, people who rent their own homes, and people wishing to commission their own homes. And then at point 5.59 of my proof, I make a few bullet points, which is that there's a significant proportion of family housing, that 30% of the scheme is either one or two bed dwellings, which is suitable for either entry level to the housing market or potentially people wanting to downsize. As we spoke about, there's 26 affordable units, of which 7 will be first homes secured from Section 106, again, new entrants into the market housing. And there are 2 bungalows proposed which will be suitable to meet all people's needs. In addition to that, and this is where I draw the evidence more of Mr. Roberts, they've undertaken some further assessment work about sort of specific needs to Ashbourne. The conclusions being that the larger properties are what Ashbourne requires. It's an extremely sought after location, and there is quite a lot of out migration, population is ageing, and it's going to housing schemes like the appeal scheme is needed to meet the needs of the existing population. So I attribute significant weight to the housing mix. There is an element of that which is in the context of an inadequate supply. So it's not something that I'm sort of saying is in solid isolation. There is a relationship to the supply position.
Just in terms of the current trends and people moving out of the settlements, what if anything does that have any bearing on Ashbourne's viability or any wider economic benefits of the scheme?
Well, it's a trend that needs to be reversed to improve the economic viability of Ashbourne as a settlement, because if the working population is decreasing because people are migrating, then the economic benefit or the economic activity in the area is likely to decrease. So it's about catering for the needs of the working population.
That's it.
I'll leave it on from benefits
I'm just rounding up.
now. Okay, can I just ask?
Of course.
talk about energy efficient design, which you've attached moderate weight to as a benefit. I just want to ask the question because you specifically say you could be providing electric vehicle charging points. That's something we could condition to ensure that that is achieved.
I think it's something you could condition on, yeah. I think it's going to be something that's going to be required for building regs in the not too distant future if it's not already. Not just building regs is not already, but yes, certainly something that we could condition.
If we're going to take it as a benefit, we can secure it.
Yeah.
What did you say about optimising the prospect? It needs to say that panels, can you just explain that to me?
I think that's set out in the climate change statement, which is CD 142. Having read it myself, there is a comprehensive explanation of that, but I think effectively what it's all about is the orientation of the roofs to be suitable for the PV panels, and I think it's something that they will consider in detailed design.
Is it because is it this simple that the layout is such that houses are going to have either north or south side roof?
Yes, yeah.
They talk about loss of BMD land. Can you just elaborate on that for me?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely negligible in my view, but when I was reviewing S4, I noted that there is a part of the policy which talks about agricultural land, that's the most first-hand land. I'll just get
Are we here?
it is those local, so it will be core document 5.1.
No, I mean what
Oh,
land
what? Sorry.
is the site?
What? Yeah. So it's a mix. This is summarised in paragraph 5.52 of my proof. So only 1.9 hectares of the site can be classed as estimates first time agricultural land.
Site.
6.6, I think. But that 0.9 hectares is also fragmented as well. It's not all in one piece. And I don't think in any logical or reasonable summary it can be considered as a significant loss. So in that sense, I've just given it a negligible weight.
And what was it? Did you say it was S4?
Yes. Criteria Q.
Any significant loss of less? That way, but is this our country side policy? Yes, it is.
Thanks, Now, so one final point as well on the footpath point, Mr. Bassett. There's a distinction between your approach and Mrs. Ford's approach. She says that not being able to make a footpath connection to Premier Avenue should be afforded significant weight. What's your view about that, please?
Yes, I mean, I know it's been a contentious point throughout the appeal. It's fair to say from the outset that the appellant looked to try and see whether or not there was potential for it to be provided by providing what they could do, what was in their gift, which was proposing a link up to the boundary. That's now been removed. In my view, the absence of this western connection does not render the scheme unsustainable. It's still accessible to facilities and services. That said, ideally, it would be better if it was there, but it is for reasons outside of my client's control. it would be better to have a choice, but I don't think it's so critical to reach the levels of harm that Mrs. Ford was suggesting, and I've really only given it very limited weight in the applied balance, and I think limited harm as an individual issue.
Thank you. I think there's also a further point of clarification that you wanted to point to about the red row green space that was discussed with Mr. Carr. Can you just help us with that?
Yeah, it was just a point that Mr. Carr made, I think, in response to a question that you posed, Mark, which is whether there was any sort of boundary treatment between the open spaces of our scheme and the proposed scheme. And I think Mr. Carr said it was largely open. You may have seen it or you would into the side, but I think there's a post rail fence that runs, I think, pretty much the length of it. So it's very open in its nature, but there is a post rail fence.
When you say in its nature, what do you mean? Physically or visually or character?
All of the above, really, yeah. It's a normal post rail fence, low, see through it. Yeah, you can see right the way through it, so it's not an intrusive feature in any way.
And that's not something that we're proposing, it's just already there. Yeah. So I think when Mr. Carr was answering the question, he was thinking about what is it we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And that was the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Then, finally then, Mr. Bassett, can I ask you to just give the inquiry your view, having regards to the policies of development plan and or the tilted balance test in the framework, what's your position on whether or not permission should be granted for the scheme?
Scheme complies with the development plan. We've heard about that position, and in my mind, sites like this on the edge of Tier 1 settlements are right at the top of the tree of sites that should be approved to remedy that position. The scheme complies with the development plan and therefore should be granted without delay. I don't think this is the case, but if any conflict was identified, I think the benefits of the scheme are significant, and although it's a hypothetical situation, I don't know what element it's balancing it against, but even if there was some limited harm again against the scheme, the proposal would significantly outweigh that, and again against the tilted balance, and expect it to be granted.
Is there anything else that you'd like to draw to the attention of the inquiry before I hand you over for cross-examination, Mr. Bassett?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think an hour and a half. I think that's an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah.
I think that's probably right.
So we could, I think take a quick comfort break now, because there's a chance we could get through and then.
Yeah.
And
Possible.
adjourn.
Possible.
Yeah, okay. Come back at 5:30 then.
Thank you, Mark. Which makes sense. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
To be honest, I was all right, because the lady was quite well, she's going to have a man now. No, she's gone to Richmond. Yeah, Annabelle's Christmas.
Yeah, I'm good mates with Annabelle.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I met Annabelle when she was at Pebble.
Oh, yeah.
So for ever since. Because, yeah, so she's been at Rich for about 2 years now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
She seems to be enjoying it because she jumped around a bit. She went to Germans on the Soul.
Yeah.
I think she went.
She worked for herself for a while.
Yeah, she did, and then I think she went because she's Rex, isn't she? Not panic. You know, I'm gonna. So sometimes those.
Yeah.
It all started in the 80s back. There weren't any planners back then. It was all chartered surveyors. Yeah, so no, she's lovely. I seen her in ages.
I've known her about since we were teenagers.
Oh really? Wow.
She used to work at the tea bars in North County with my mates. So we used to share the same social skills.
Yes, yeah.
And then she used to work behind the bar at Chambers Club in Nottingham.
Oh, brilliant.
And so she used to serve as our pints.
Oh,
So
nice.
that was always the first port of call on our night out. So,
Brilliant.
yeah.
Oh, dear.
She's probably got some tales.
I was going to say, well, what we need to do then is we all need to go drinks in that sort of
Yeah.
RDC thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because Annabelle goes quite a lot.
Yeah, they are racing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they changed it to RDC on. It's just not been seen straight, to be honest with you, at that point.
I always,
I'm not sure I trust myself.
I always put it in my calendar. There's a great thing to go to watch all these people.
Yeah, one round. Well, you're going to have to come
Yeah.
because, yeah, I've been to one in the last 2 years, that church, isn't it? There was one last week and I couldn't make it. I was just like, just not too much on. But yeah, we'll have to look for the next one.
Yeah,
We'll just see if we can get Annabelle out as well. Get Mark out.
The Chambers is now Curry House. So
Oh,
we
is
go
it? Oh,
from
well,
Curry
there
House
you go.
to
Right,
that
real
same
go.
Curry House.
Okay. Nice little snacks now. Well done.
Oh yeah, yeah, go if you
Yeah,
like.
you're right, yeah. Is everybody in all that?
All different temperatures. Excellent.
That's why it's options. Yeah.
Which one? I'm not sure. Right.
Better get the ring before we-
Well, that's it, it's a bit we, it's we, like you. The why we. Weeks on Friday. That's why they're all working themselves up into a frenzy. Yes. I've already told you, I think it's going to have no slipping correspondence that I'm talking about. That it was referenced in March. It's probably going to have to be me that just double checks it, but I did. Like, oh, we got that. And I was like, yeah, we did. At least something there. Sorry, it's not fair. I am only joking because he's full now. He only stepped into the back like a week and a half. Probably James. Yeah. Oh, I didn't go into that one sheet, so we'll get that. Should be at the end of the night, it's confidence.
Good morning, Mr. Bassett. Morning. Can I start by asking you another question about the NPPF? If you go within it, page 5, section 2, achieving sustainable development.
Yeah.
So we see paragraph 7, the purpose of the planning system is to contribute to the achievement of sustainable development.
Yeah.
We see in paragraph 8, that achieving that means there are 3 overarching objectives which are interdependent and have to be pursued in a mutually supportive ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know what they are: economic, social, and environmental. The social objective includes the provision of a sufficient number and range of homes to meet needs. Yeah,
That's right.
meeting housing needs. It also includes other things, though, doesn't it? In particular, it includes fostering well-designed, beautiful and safe places with accessible services.
Yes.
Okay. And it follows then, doesn't it, that what we're being told in section 2 is that decisions on the planning system, including the development control management system, should deliver all of these things, not just one.
Yeah, I mean, the way that the objectives are set out for sustainable development is again really sort of broad. I mean, it includes all issues really. The framework says that it's not criteria on which each decision can or should be judged. Paragraph 9, but I don't dispute that these are a wide range of issues that are considered enormous applications.
But when we're looking at specifically, when we're looking at the delivery of housing to achieve the social objective of providing a sufficient number and range of homes, causing that we can note this is the two aspects of housing delivery, isn't it? The delivery of the quantum of housing and the range of housing which would embrace things. Which I think we agree actually that is an aspect of the same thing, or they're just different aspects of provision of housing.
What I agreed was is that again a significant weight to housing needs, but part of that significant weight was due to the absence of supply.
Okay, well, I'll come back to that. But the point I want to make for the moment, I want to see whether you agree, is what the framework is striving after so far as the delivery of housing. So it isn't just the delivery of housing full stop, it's the delivery of housing in well-designed and safe, beautiful and safe places with accessible services.
Yeah, that's what the NPPF is seeking to achieve, and that's what I think the scheme does.
Yeah. And so just delivering the housing without the well-designed and safe places or accessible services is explained in this part of the NPPF.
Yeah, there's a judgment call based on what the circumstances of that case is, how sustainable it is, how well designed it is, and as we've heard, our cases is that it meets both of those objectives.
I do understand. Can I just say at the start, I'm sure the inspector understands what your case is. I absolutely understand it. So I understand why you don't want to be taken to have given your case away, but I won't do that. I won't say I've got you with you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to repeat every episode. Your cases. Thank you. Okay. So, as you pointed out in paragraph 9, you said the objectives aren't, you don't just apply that as, I think there's a bit of a trend before, so the reason why paragraph 9 is people just forgetting to look at the specific policies that follow and doing a broad brush kind of application of the objectives. And the framework says in 9, that's not the right way to do it. This is what it's saying is these are the objectives that underpin the policies which follow. And so the way you should determine applications is by reference to the preparation and implementation of plans which have been prepared in accordance with the NPPF, which should have NPPF compliant policies.
Yeah.
And then the application of policies in the framework.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you should, the hope is that you'll achieve the kind of the objectives that we've set out there.
Yes.
Agree?
Yeah.
And you agree, because you say in your proof, that all the relevant policies that we're concerned with in the local plan are consistent with the NPPF. Yeah. Up to date in that sense. Okay. So, as far as you're concerned, the planning authority is concerned as well. The local plan and the NPPF walk hand in hand.
Well, they're consistent with each other. Yeah.
So we agree, don't we? Because, as the NPPF says in 9, you need to try to deliver sustainable development with these objectives by applying plan policies and by applying the policies of the framework.
Yeah. We know that there's the presumption of the development plan first, and then the NPPF is a determined consideration.
And you're, in the way you're entirely consistent with that. You said, start with the development plan, which you just said again. We judge whether there's compliance or not with the development plan. If there is, that's the end of the matter. You don't need to go to the framework. Actually, in that case, it's paragraph 11 tells us to approve without delay.
Yeah, in terms of balance, we don't need it. Yeah.
And if you don't, you say we look at the tilted balance and the application of the NPPF. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, sorry, I mean, just to qualify that, you know, the MPPF still is a material consideration in the.
Yeah, I'm not saying we ignore it. I'm not saying we ignore it, but you're saying what the PPF is telling us there is that, as far as the decision is concerned, if you meet the statutory development plan, you comply with that, then you should be granted permission.
Yeah.
Possibly absent something exceptional. But
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So we have to start, we agree, by considering the development plan and whether or not it applies to that overall. We look at that overall.
Yeah.
We agree that we're going to have to consider the MPPF and what your case is. You just explained right at the end with your evidence in chief. If for some reason, if the council's case is accepted and the company guilty doesn't comply with the development plan overall, you say, well, look to the tilted balance in the MPPF policies, and you say you in accordance with that.
Yes, although I did caveat it saying it's a hypothetical situation, so I'm not clear on what the adverse effects
No,
are.
you say we win at the first stage.
Yeah, I said we win at the first stage.
Well, you're saying if we don't win at the first stage, we win at the second stage.
Yeah, based on our evidence, yeah.
Okay. But can we agree this? There isn't any. So you're saying if we're contrary to the development plan, there is another material consideration, namely the MPPF. And that should result in the planning permission, contrary to the development plan, if we are not in court.
What I'm saying is yeah. So if we're not complying with the development plan as a whole, then we go to the tilted balance. In that scenario, I'm dealing with a hypothetical situation because I'm not sure what the conflict is at that stage. So then it's judged against the tilted balance. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. And what I just want to be clear on is, if, contrary to that, you are in conflict with both the development plan and the MPPF, you are not relying on any further material considerations which would outweigh the conflict with the development plan.
It's an entirely hypothetical.
I know, but you posed the hypothetical yourself, you said it yourself, you've got, so I don't think you can resist answering it. You said, if we're contrary to the development plan for some reason, even though I don't think we are, then tilted balance. So I'm asking you to go a stage further. This is your opportunity. Is there any other material consideration you rely on which you say would justify a decision contrary to the development plan other than the application of balance and the other policies of the MPPF?
If we're on tilted balance, that's our case will be material on tilted balance.
Okay. So, if you are wrong on both points and the inspector concludes as the council suggests, it is contrary to both the development plan and the MPPF balance presumption. The inspector should refuse planning permission and dismiss the information.
Yeah, she gets to a stage where all the adverse effects of the tilted balance outweigh the benefits in her view. So it would lead to dismissal.
Thank you very much. That's helpful to frame what we've come. Can you prove evidence you explained that you were instructed after the refusal?
That's correct.
I think like every witness in this case.
I think so.
And I think you referred to Freeze being instructed in January. You were first involved, or did you become involved later?
No, I didn't come from the outset, so we were instructed in early January. I went to visit the site in early January, so myself and my colleagues were involved in preparation of a statement of case.
Okay, so it was you were involved?
Yeah, I was involved in.
Okay, thank you. You say in your evidence as well, this is page 2, proof of evidence 213, that your evidence is drawn from topic-specific evidence of the appellant's team. So that means, I think, like Mrs. Ford, your assessment of the proposals against policy and your planning balance are based on the evidence of the appellant's witnesses already.
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you. Can I ask you to turn to the end of your proof on page 46? So your conclusion that the proposal accords with the development plan and that there aren't any material considerations to justify not granting permission, and that in a tilted balance world, the benefits of the scheme far outweigh, you say, in the adverse effects, which are very limited. That again is all based on the evidence of the
Yeah, I mean, in terms of balance, obviously, there's elements that I deal with myself.
Yeah, I'm not saying I don't mean exclusive.
But yeah, you're right.
Oh,
In terms of the technical evidence and the points that we've just raised, yeah.
Specifically, on design, you rely on Mr. Carr,
Yeah.
And in relation to highway safety, in particular, you rely on Mr. Price.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think, though, you accept, as we said earlier on, the appellants accept that if Mr. Carey's case for the council on highway safety is accepted, the appeal should be dismissed.
Yeah, if Mr. Carey's evidence is accepted and there is found to be a highway safety issue with the access, then looking at the policies of the development plan and the open, then that would be a reason for refusal.
Thank you, that's very fair, and thank you for making that concession, because it's just short of things to deal with in that way as well, realistic and fair, thank you. Is that also the case in relation to design? And what I put specifically, if the inspector concludes in line with the council evidence in this case that the scheme is not well designed, is it accepted that that is a reason to dismiss the appeal?
I think that's more nuanced, because I think it could depend on the extent that the inspector finds harm associated with the design. So there could be quite a broad spectrum of how that is felt. So no, I wouldn't go as far as saying that.
So again, so your position is it might be, but not necessarily. Depends on the specifics.
It depends on the specifics.
Okay, thank you. I will come back to that, but it's good to define the areas of difference. Thank you. Can I ask you to turn in your proof, please, to the section where we deal with the statement of common ground, which is on page 6, paragraph 3.5. You need to have a statement of common ground as well, if you it's the way you can do, but why is it
No, that's fine. I've got it.
Okay. So looking at your proof, paragraph 3.5, first bullet point. So in summary, the statement of common ground confirms agreement on the following matters. Please note this is exhaustive. First one, the proposed development complies with local plan policies HC1 and S4, and there is no conflict with the Ashbourne neighbourhood plan. Now, you enter the principal development is therefore in accordance with the development plan. Can we go, you reference paragraph 517 of the statement of common ground, if we just turn that up. Page,
Yeah, got it.
yeah, 19. And we see there, overall, the proposed development complies with local plan policies H1 and S4, which seems to be consistent with what you say, but we have to read on. And there's no conflict with the neighbourhood plan with respect to the principle of development. So, can we agree? It may be the first sentence is incomplete in your 5, isn't it? There's no dispute that it complies with those policies, and there's no conflict with the neighbourhood plan insofar as the principle of development is.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Second, well, and of course we know there is disagreement over whether there is compliance with those policies in terms of. Yeah.
In total, yeah.
Okay. Second bullet point, the council is unable to demonstrate a 5-year land supply, and then there's a figure of 3.9. Obviously, that obviously needs to be updated. And sorry, so the next point I want to pick up is the second bullet point from the bottom. There will be no harmful impact of landscape in visual terms as a result of the development, and the reference in the statement of common ground is 5.24, which is page 21. We see there the reference to the Sheila, and it says this committee report appraised landscape impact, paragraph 79 to 17, it is based in unacceptable part. Landscape impact didn't form part of the reason for the removal and has agreed to no harmful impact in landscape and visual terms as a result of development. It is accepted within the appellant's LVA that was submitted with the application that there will be adverse landscape and visual impacts there.
Yeah, I think it's a site level, and I think it's quite like a site in the immediate surroundings, isn't it?
I think there's also a slightly wider level, or it's a lower level of harm. There, what my point is, there is an acceptance of adverse landscape and visual effects, isn't there?
Yeah, it's a site level, and I say immediate surroundings, from what I recollect. That when you judge in the landscape and visual impact as a whole against the policy requirements, then we're very comfortable that we meet those policy requirements.
Yeah, again, that's why I put my question more precisely. I think the answer to the question is yes, you say at a site level for landscape impacts. I think it is slightly broader than that, but I will leave that. Certainly there are major to moderate adverse visual effects identified there as well, aren't there?
Yes, as I say, I think it's cited immediate surroundings. Happy to go there.
I think there was a minor level. I don't think it matters for the purpose of my question because that's sufficient. My point is simply how we should understand the statement of common ground at this point. When the common statement of common ground says there is no harmful impact, what it means is unacceptably harmful, doesn't it? It doesn't mean there's no harm whatsoever, because otherwise it'd be inconsistent with your own LVA.
It says what it says. Landscape impact is not for part of reasons for refusal, and it is going down landscape and visual terms as a result of the development. Yeah, I can tell that's a statement looking at it in the round, and the LVIA does identify some adverse impact at site and immediate surrounds.
Yeah, and so what you and the planning authority would intend to agree there is that the position hasn't changed from the committee stage, where the landscape and visual effects that were identified were not deemed to constitute unacceptable harm.
I think that's fair.
Thank you. Okay, good. And then, yes, the final bullet point on page 6, the local highway authority has no objection to proposed development. That is correct, but it's also right to note, isn't it, that it did have concerns with the proposed developments originally.
Originally, yeah, and we've heard from Mr. Price that worked with the highway authority to resolve those, yeah.
And they included concerns about accessibility to the
I think I recall that there was some discussion about that, but again, it was resolved, yeah.
Well, I'm not sure this. Can you take up the highway authority's original response, please, which is the core document? They withdrew their concerns and did not object, I accept, but whether the issues they raised were resolved, I'd just like to touch on. So 3.4 is a letter of the 19th of January 2023.
Yeah.
So we see the highway authority has undertaken an appraisal of submitted documents, recommended the applications and determined in revised and otherwise of low matters, references to various policies, and number of points on page 2 going on to page 3. See on that?
Yes. Yeah.
On the third page, the top of the page, point 6 says public transport for the proposal exceeds the recommended distance. The TA identified the nearest stop to be 300 metres from the south access, but 400 metres is the right maximum distance. And when you account for the distance of the access of many properties exceed the 400 metre distance. The highway authority may have decided no longer to propose the development on that ground, but that remains the case. There are still in excess of 400 metres away from
Well, there will be properties in excess of 400 metres, but I think Mr. Price's evidence demonstrated that that's acceptable. And obviously, my view anyway is the highway authority didn't feel it was a sufficient issue, otherwise they would have maintained an objection on that point.
No, the highway authority gave a view on it, but Mr. Carey has a different view on it. But the fact of the matter is that concern about there being many properties in excess of 400 metres away, that factually remains the case.
Well, it was identified in an earlier consultation response by the highway authority. The fact that it's not in their final response, I think, to me at least, suggests that they didn't consider it to be an issue. And demonstrated, we don't consider it to be an issue either.
Okay. Can I look at number 8 as well? The internal site layout is a matter of concern. Its linear design doesn't provide natural traffic calming, except satisfy the high authority on the streets, nor does it address the design and PSP 2017. The layout can't dominate, it doesn't prioritise pedestrian and cyclists. Also, the site is on a significant gradient in the long section provided, and there's various things about obviously the gradient hasn't changed since that. There's been no amendment designs that affect the gradient, has there?
To be honest, off the top of my head, I wouldn't be sure. What I do know is that there was a series of amended drawings that were supplied throughout the application, and it was all getting residual highway authority concerns.
Okay. It's still a linear design.
It's a linear site. Yeah.
And then there's a example that the highway authority had concern about street trees as important. Okay. Thank you. Could you turn please then back to your proof at paragraph, page 10, paragraph 4.7, please?
Yeah.
Start with policy S1. So again, if you're able to, it would be useful to keep your proof open on one. What you highlight in 4.7, you said of particular relevance, you pick out one of the bullet points, which is meeting most development needs within or adjacent to existing communities and regard for settlement hierarchy.
Yeah.
But I think, as you know, there were 16 bullet points containing criteria on how to achieve sustainable development.
Yeah.
And the proper approach, the one that the inspector must adopt, is to consider all the ones which are relevant, not just the one. Yeah, really.
Yeah, and I'm not denying that others aren't relevant. I've just identified that one as the most relevant in terms of principle, effectively.
Okay. Then can we agree which other ones are relevant? So if we look at page 30 of the local plan.
Yeah.
Second and third bullet points on making efficient and effective use of land, but also reflecting character, accessibility and infrastructure and capacity area. That's relevant.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's directly relevant to the reasons for refusal as well as the design.
Alright, so yeah, it's relevant, yeah.
Thank you. Also, the page 31, minimising the need to travel by promoting development of location as well as access to a broad range of jobs, services and facilities which are accessible by foot, cycle or public transport with reduced reliance on the private car, that's referring to HC19. That's also clearly relevant to the application and the reasons for refusal.
Yeah, so relevant considerations of reason for refusal.
And I'm now here, so I'm picking up the highlights as well. About 4 bullet points down from that, so the fifth one on page 31, seeking to secure a high quality, locally distinctive and inclusive design and layout to all developments, in brackets policy PD1, also relevant. And what this policy is generally doing, actually, isn't it? Almost like the beginning of the MPPF, it's saying this is what we want to achieve sustainable development. These are the key principles. Now you can see them in these policies. It's signposting the policies you should be looking to achieve these elements of sustainable development.
That's right.
Thank you. Okay, policy, go back to your text, policy S2 next. We're agreeing Ashbourne is a market town in the first tier of settlement hierarchy, but we also agree that the appeal site is outside the settlement in the countryside as defined in the development plan.
Yeah, that's right, the defined settlement boundary, yeah, that's classed as countryside.
Okay. And can we agree as well, if you could look at the local plan, if you go on to paragraph. Yes, sorry, 4.20 point.3 on page 34. We see the purposes of the settlement boundaries.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I've got it, yeah.
And the purpose they serve is twofold. It's to assist in directing built development to the most sustainable, suitable and sustainable locations. Final 4 lines of paragraph 43 on page 34.
Yeah, yeah.
Two purposes are identified. Firstly, directing them. So it's not about limiting the supply of land.
Yeah.
It's assisting in directing built development to the most suitable and sustainable locations.
Yeah.
So where the settlement boundary has been drawn, embodies a judgment approved by the local plan inspector on where growth would be most suitable.
Yeah, I mean, what the that's what the text says there, to assist in directing building development towards the most suitable and sustainable locations. But you have to obviously look at the plan as a whole, and the plan as a whole is identifying that edge of settlement locations will clearly be sustainable, otherwise it would be in policy HC1 and S4. And you know, there's clearly going to be settlements further down the hierarchy that are less sustainable in settlement than I would suggest the edge of the tier 1 settlements are.
There is no presumption in the plan that or if there is, can you somewhere it is, that an edge of settlement site, whether it be on a tier 1 settlement, tier 2 or tier 3, will ipso facto be a sustainable and suitable location for development. It depends on the site.
There will be an element of site analysis, but the policy directs, first of all, it says that the primary focus for growth should be the market towns. The plan as a whole also says, in a situation where we have low supply, that sites adjacent to the settlement boundary effectively, in principle, suitable for housing is good for the considerations. So, whilst it's not making an express statement that every edge of settlement site is sustainable, when looking at the plan as a whole, I think this appeal sign can need to be seen as sustainable.
We differ on that. We differ on that. All I'm saying is you can't simply move from it's on the edge of the settlement of a tier 1 settlement to it's therefore suitable and sustainable. On the contrary, it's something that needs to be assessed and considered.
It's always going to need to be assessed on its individual merit.
Thank you. The second purpose of 4.23 is defining the intended relationship between settlement and countryside beyond. So again, we can note the way the settlement boundary is being drawn at the moment defines a particular intended relationship between Ashford and the countryside and beyond.
That was defined at the time that the local plan was adopted, but again, what I would say is that the plan is envisaging development or potential development on edge of settlements.
Yeah. And again, there's no presumption in the plan that development on the edge of the settlement will result in a suitable or acceptable relationship with the countryside beyond. Again, that has to be looked at in every individual case and assessed.
Yeah, that's a fair comment.
Thank you. Okay. Can we agree this as well? Policies HC1 and S4 are the main policies dealing with both the principle of development in a location such as this. What they basically, essentially, they're the two policies which tell it in the development plan, which tell us whether a particular development outside a settlement boundary will or may be acceptable.
They're the key policy.
They're key. Thank you. If you go back to your proof and turn to page 11 where you deal with policy HC1, you said, look, the third bullet point, local location of housing development sets up its approach to supporting housing development. The third bullet point states, supporting housing development on unallocated sites. But that is, an incomplete notice because if we go to the policy itself on page 72, as you acknowledge elsewhere, there's a but the important bit that's missed off there is subject to consideration against other policies in the local plan. So you're right, it does say that there'll be consideration given to supporting health and development on allocated sites and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But there is a big caveat which is subject to consideration against other policies in the local plan and the provisions of the LBPA.
Well, I'll just say that in the paragraph below.
So you do that, you're right, you're fair enough, it's follows on. Okay. In terms of S4, which is above that on page 10, can I just see if we can agree how this policy works? So you say development S4 sets out circumstances where the types of development that will be granted outside settlement boundaries, no problem with that. And then you say there are 20 criteria, but the most relevant, A to T, but the most relevant in respect of the principle is 1. And then there is somewhere else in your report where you go on to say, out of the criteria A to L, it's I that's the relevant one. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's paragraph 5.5. One of my proof where I look at sort of what are the criteria relevant or irrelevant.
Yeah. And what? But let's just explain to you whether there is any difference with how the policy works. If I put to you how I works, and then see whether we agree. I think you do. You can tell me if I'm wrong. So it's one. Sometimes you often get this sort of question: is this one way you have to satisfy every criteria, or some of them? This policy is a mix of both, isn't it? Because what you've got is different categories of potentially permissible development in A to L. So between A, you have to come within either A, B, C, D, E, F, etc. to L. You have to fall somewhere within that.
Yeah.
And then you're in principle acceptable, let's say. Yeah?
Yeah.
But you also have to then satisfy the criteria. The important one in I is the final bullet point. We're agreed on it as well. I, S4I, it's only the final bullet point that is potentially applicable here.
That's correct.
Yeah. And it's only applicable, fully applicable, subject to consideration against other policies of the local plan and provisions of the FUL.
Yeah.
So to comply with it fully, you need to you need to consider the other policies of the plan and the FUL. Good. The following after L, so M through to T, those are all additional criteria which all have to be infringed in order to comply with S4, aren't they? So there are all sorts of harm that might, or failures to achieve things that might result in conflict with S4, even if you're in principle okay with all the specific categories.
Yeah, again, somewhere to apply, as I said, as my proof, because of the type of development. Yeah.
It depends, as relevant, they apply as relevant. So yeah, obviously if it's not relevant, it doesn't matter. But for example, in this case, we're agreed that criteria, or R and T, are relevant and need to be considered. So firstly, it has to have a safe access, and the rest have severe impacts, which we're not considering that part of that. So the key issue in there are is whether the access is safe.
Yeah.
And we're agreed that if it isn't safe, there is non-compliance with S4.
The scenario was that the access was deemed unsafe by the inspector and there'd be non-compliance with it. Yeah, that's what
Thank you, that's fair enough. It doesn't point to it. Then T, it doesn't conflict with any of the relevant policies of the local plan. So if the inspector determines that there is conflict with the design policies of the local plan, there would also be conflict with policy S4 as a result of criteria T.
Yeah, if the inspector again concludes that there is conflict with the design policies, then that would be in other relevant policies.
Okay, so
what we would say again is it's about the degree of harm and degree of conflict on that note in terms of weighing up the balance.
There would clearly be conflict with S4 in two respects, wouldn't there? Because it would be relevant to the consideration of it under I, final bullet bullet points and the proviso at the end subject to considerations. And it would definitely conflict with S14 explicitly.
Yeah, but I think certainly under any planning balance scenario, certainly under a tilted balance scenario, if there was found to be some conflict with design policy, you're still going to need to know the whole thing off in the balance, so it would automatically need to refute it.
Well, what I'm saying is, if there is conflict with the design policies or the highway safety policies in the local plan, there is also the proposed it's S4, isn't it?
Contrary to S1R and S14. Yeah.
And it would be contrary to S4 overall, wouldn't it? Because they all have to be satisfied if they're relevant.
Yeah, but under the same umbrella. So you could say you would reach the conclusion that it's contrary to S4 because those two would have to be satisfied. And as I say,
You said
there is a balance.
There is a tough one. Okay, I'll come back to that thing. And going back to your proof of evidence, page 18, policy, just your comment on the relationship between HC1 and S4, so paragraph 515 to 516. In short, you note that there is a difference in the wording between S4 and HC1, but you say in practice it's not a material difference because, again, the core thrust is there's in principle support subject to consideration against the other policies and the.
Yeah, I mean, as I set out in my proof, the wording of the policies taken to the same position. It's just that they're quite different in terms of the initial wording, but they get to the same place.
HC1's more general signposting policy, isn't it? That's probably the explanation. Sort of, it's saying things, putting things more broadly and generally, and S4 is telling you specifically what you do with age of settlement sites in a non-5-year supply situation.
Yeah, that's a reasonable explanation.
Okay. So it follows then, doesn't it, that if the inspector agrees with the council on highway safety and design, there'll be conflict with the specific policies on those matters, and also conflict with the key policy of S4. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, T is a sort of almost like a catch-all policy, isn't it? But there will be inspector suitable access for that design for a policy requirements of the plan, then there would be conflict with S4.
And so in that situation, the only conclusion that would be drawn is that there's conflict with the plan overall, because with the key policy S4 and then the specific topic-based policies.
There would be conflict with the plan, and again, it just then goes down to a planning balance one.
Okay, thank you. It's helpful. And can we? You say in paragraph 514, so on the same page 17. I think this again is fair and correct. Saying that it's clearly right, isn't it? Because S4 is clearly intended to reflect the presumption in favour of sustainable development in what is now paragraph 11. And you say that it is, and that it's consistent with that. And so, notwithstanding that the council can't demonstrate a 5-year supply, because these policies specifically have regard to the scenario where the council is able to do that, and applying tests that are consistent with the NPPF, you consider they should be given full. So, HC1, S4, consistent with the NPPF, paragraph 11 in particular, and should be given full weight. Yeah.
That's my case, yeah.
That's why I said really that the development plan and the NPPF march hand in glove here, don't we? So if the development plan is telling us that there is conflict here for the reasons that we've gone over, then there is also going to be conflict with the framework.
could be, and so for example, and I think I noticed an earlier comment when I said that if the access was found to be unsafe, then there would be conflict with the relevant policies of the local plan and the PPF.
Insofar as the plan is got policies which are consistent, should be given full weight in your opinion, isn't it? Aren't they then being to be thought of as up to date? Because being up to date is normally inconsistent with the MP.
I'm not making any assertion that the policies are inconsistent.
Paragraph 12 of the PPF says if you're contrary to an up-to-date development plan, you normally refuse.
That's what it says, but obviously, that's not our case.
Can I ask you about housing land supply then next? We agree the plan is more than 5 years old. It was done under the NPPF, so it would have been 20. I think it just would have been examined prior to the 2018 version of the NPPF.
Yeah, I think it would have been examined under the original 2012 NPPF.
Adopted that. It's agreed that that in those circumstances the standard method has to be used in the county. I mean, I think it was adopted in December, so I think that would have been the 2017 NPPF was enforced at the date of adoption. It was December.
It was 2018 I'm not sure.
Well, I'll come back to that. It's more than 5 years old, and it follows that in those circumstances the NPPF requires the application of the standard method, local housing need figure, rather than the housing requirement itself, unless it's been reviewed and found not to be in need of updating, which isn't the case. And so we're agreed that when the inspector is considering the 5-year housing land supply position and what the shortfall is, she has to use the local housing need figure as the basis for that assessment.
Yeah, that's right, and that's how Mr. Roberts has approached it.
And we know that the local housing need figure here is actually quite significantly smaller than the housing development figure, 217 versus 284. We also agree that there is a difference between what qualifies as deliverable supply for the purposes of the OPM, which has been kind of restrictively defined. So to set quite a particular burden on planning authorities wishing to rely on allocations in particular, hasn't it? It changed the picture. It became stricter for planning authorities. There's a higher bar for them to include allocations post 2017 or 2018 NPPF conflicts. That was changed. Okay. And the bar is now set by you need clear evidence to put allocations in your 5-year supply.
Yeah, it's defined in the NPPF.
But that means there's a distinction between what may be countable in the deliverable supply and what might be actually likely to be delivered. Because it doesn't follow that because there isn't clear evidence that a particular allocation is going to deliver dwellings within 5 years, that it won't deliver dwellings within 5 years.
No, but we can only make an assessment against the evidence in front of us, and that's what 5-year supply documents. To a degree, I accept the point. There'll be sites that aren't accounted for in a 5-year housing supply that will deliver dwellings that weren't envisaged. Equally, there could be sites that are in the housing supply that are identified to deliver and don't.
But what I'm saying is, I suppose it's another way of putting it. The absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. In this case, the absence of clear evidence isn't clear evidence of absence. So just because the council can't put an allocation in its supply, Mr. Hayes says, I accept, I'll take 124 out because we haven't got quite the evidence we think we need for it. Doesn't mean that none of those will actually deliver houses.
No, but we can only got the best available information, and that's all we can do.
And we do in the supply, you're quite right, that doesn't mean we can put them in the supply, I'm not arguing that at all. But when we look, what I'm trying to see whether we can agree on, is there is a distinction between what is in the deliverable supply, whether or not there is an actual problem with delivering,
Yeah, it's not a precise science, and you know what may be in projected to be supplied might not materialise in terms of delivery. So delivery could be higher, it could be lower. But yeah, except you know, 5-year housing supply projections are clearly not an exact science. There's no crystal ball.
Yeah, but it's inherently likely. It's inherently unlikely, isn't it, that there's going to be. I know Mr. Roberts says zero allocations in the 5-year supply. And that might be fair enough, based on, but that's on the basis of lack of clear evidence. Mr. Roberts isn't contending, or hasn't. I don't think so. I don't think you're contending either. That in reality, it's likely that there won't be any houses on allocated sites.
I mean, it would be particularly unusual for the local authority not to deliver any housing over a 5-year period. But as I say, you know, even by the council's numbers, they're projected to be really low on a 5-year basis.
Okay, and we can see this is a function of having adopted a conservative approach to how you count out whether you put allocations in the supply. If we look at the AMR, could I ask you to turn to the same one? I think it's forward, so it's core document 6.2. When you wrote within that, if you could go to page 17 and 18.
6.2, so is that the 2018-19?
I think it's the next one, 1920. It should be 1920. This is 1920.
6.2, I've got 18-19.
So you go to 1918. We'll go back that one. 1920.
Yeah, sorry.
I've got it. Oh, no, you're right. It is 6.3.
Yeah, 6.3. Yeah. Sorry, can you tell me the page?
17 and 18. So we see there, for example, that on page 18 that in 2020 it was anticipated that only 208 dwellings would be delivered in the last AMR year of 2022 to 23. Yeah.
So yeah. Sorry, you're looking at the graph, aren't you? Yeah.
And there wasn't the 5-year supply, which you also see on page 17.
Yeah.
So forecast is based on they're meant to be consistent. So the forecast is based on what's considered applied within the 5 years.
Essentially.
But then we see that in reality, so we go to Mr. Roberts' and start with page 22. So the page 27. Well, it's complete of completions. Yeah, so in fact there were 286 in 22-23, so significantly over what was predicted 3 years before.
Yeah.
2 years before. 3 years. Okay. And in fact, we can also see from that shows very neatly, doesn't it, that the council has, the completions have been well in excess of both the housing requirement and the local housing needs figures for the area consistently since the plan was adopted.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point that you're making is that delivery has actually been quite good despite the fact that there's been an absence of a 5-year housing supply for quite a period of time. But you know, that isn't the policy test. That's not what the policy is asking us to do. So I don't think it changes anything in terms of any kind of weight. So yeah, it's past delivery, and we're now looking forward.
Yeah, I'm suggesting it changes the answer to the 5-year supply questions. And I think, but the reason I'm bringing that up is to say that when the inspector's considering whether there is a chronic and acute delivery problem. Completion figures don't suggest that there is. There is a 5-year supply problem, but it doesn't necessarily translate into an actual chronic or acute problem with the delivery of housing.
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. I think the point about, I think this chronic and acute point was made in the context of the number of allocation plans that would be delivered. So it was looking forward and saying 14 would be sort of acute and chronic as a contribution towards that future supply. I think that was the point that was being made. And I don't think there's any dispute about that. I think it's a really low number. So, sorry.
The other point I need to put to you though is that it's inherently likely that, although I agree with you, for the purposes of having good planning policy, we can't take into account local plan allocations for which there isn't clear evidence of deliverability. But in reality, it is, I think you've already said, it is likely that there will be more than 14 dwellings delivered from local plan allocation. So again, there's a 5-year supply problem, accepted, but there is going to be the same problem in terms of actual completions or delivery.
The trend suggests that delivery has been reasonably good. I accept that point, but I can't look into my crystal ball. And the other thing I would say is that in terms of delivery, sites like the Liverpool site are going to be absolutely critical.
And just if you could stay with Mr. Roberts' proof, just if I could put you quickly, as this is forward about earlier on, page 21.
Page 21, yeah.
The total delivery up to the end of the last annual warranty period, a year ago basically. But we and what we can see from that page 21 is that the total completions in the 5-year period following the local plan were 2,155, and as Mrs. Ford said, that amounts to nearly 10 years worth of local housing need delivered within the first 5 years of the plan. The 9.9.
Check and read the same thing. So, page 21 of Mr. Roberts' proof is it paragraph 4.16? Yeah.
So he says forecast delivery, fair, he makes the point, fair enough,
Yeah.
that it's been less than was forecast in the plan. But my point is, it's actually double local housing need. Delivery has been double local housing need.
Yeah, well, housing need is something that we take into account now, in the last sort of 18 months after the 5-year period has started. I mean, I don't think there's any dispute that we're saying that the plan has actually delivered from housing completions have been relatively good and consistent over the period. They are dropping. This is a point about supply.
Yeah, so if the planning authority have decided to count past over supply in the housing requirement, it would, I'm sure, probably. I know it hasn't, I'm not suggesting it changes the answer to that, but I'm just saying a different approach to this would have resulted in no short.
I don't know, I'm not going to finish the question, that they have sure that you consider oversupply in a scenario of housing need requirement.
Thank you. So just put the figure to you as well on that. So I look at my calculation of it in terms of if you look at the housing requirement, 2,155 would be about 7.5 years supply in terms of the housing requirement. I mean, I'm just giving you the opportunity if you want to get your calculator out and disagree with me or sounds about right.
Yeah, say the figures again.
So 2,155 dwellings over the first 5 years.
Yeah.
amounts to 7.5 years supply judged against the 284 housing requirement figure.
Sounds about right.
Well, if I've got it wrong, I'm quite happy to be corrected later. I will approach you to that. Thank you.
7.5.
Okay. I was going to ask you some questions on Mr. Carey and highways, but I think actually that's already. Yes, I just want to ask you then about your proof of evidence. I think your proof of evidence firstly on pages 24 and 25 about the adjacent sites. Firstly, you say at the bottom of page 24, going over to page 25, within the statement of the case of the planning history of recent residential permissions on adjacent nearby sites are identified. You say you see no material difference between those development sites in respect to distance to the town centre or access to public transport. So the first point, just hold in our minds, is you say no material difference in terms of distance to the town centre or access to public transport. And then, paragraph 3.2 on page 26, you say, third line going into the fourth and fifth lines, I see no material difference in accessibility or connectivity between Redwood development and those developments. So just will you bear those things in mind when we look at plans, or perhaps looking to go to those speech. If there is, we can maybe disagree about the materiality or not, but there's undoubtedly a greater distance to the field side entrances.
Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, given that the town's to the north and the railway site is immediately to the north, then it's actually closer.
Yeah. But the difference is more significant, evidently significant, is it when one gets to the end of the development. It's clearly much further, the western end of the development.
I don't think so. The point I was trying to make in a wider context, and again, I've sort of dealt with this in evidence in chief, was the fact that, if you look at recent permissions in this part of Ashbourne, they're all in a similar location to where the town centre is and sort of access to public transport. So it's a broader point. It's not like a detailed analysis on a sort of metre by metre basis. It's this part of Ashbourne has consistently been seen as sustainable by the local authority, and this site is no different.
Okay. And again, there is a footpath link further up Wyerstone Road from the Red Road development. Pretty much comes out pretty much opposite the primary school, I think.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it takes you out onto the eastern, onto Wyerstone Road, as you say. So, I mean, I would like to estimate the distance between that and the site access with any great confidence, but I would imagine it's in the order of about 70, 80 metres. So it's not taking you to anything particularly new.
If you go to your appendix one, to the David Wilson home site, and this is the Davenport Harlow Way.
Yeah, have you got a page?
Yes, sorry, it's page 118. There are two plans. Perhaps I ought to ask you this first. 118. The differences between them. So just want to check whether I just want to ask the question to find out asking about the wrong plan. So this is the David Wilson home site. In the PDF, I should say, sorry.
Yeah.
About 14 pages on this 132. This is the same site, isn't it? Different plans.
118. Yeah.
Imagination on there.
Yeah, it might be easier to follow it on the PDF version more. Yeah, it's the same site.
Yeah. same site, and I'm not sure exactly what the differences are, but and I don't want to go through it with a fine tooth comb, but you get the general impression. I mean, there is so much connectivity on that site, both in terms of the space and within the site itself. There are multiple choices of routes, lots of footpath links through. It's not in any way, the Peel site is in no way comparable in terms of connectivity to this, is it?
Well, this layout has different number of routes, as I said, but that wasn't the point. The point, as I've said a couple of times, is a much broader one about proximity to town centre and public transport. What I'm not sure to do is like a detailed analysis of comparisons and permissions.
And we've not looked at actually the detailed figures for that site. That's not the one we've looked at. So you're seeing broad brush, it's in roughly the same location.
That's what I'm saying there.
Right. Thank you. Premier Avenue Lake. It's again. This is the judgment call. There's no dispute that it would have been better to be able to provide this.
It had been available, and we could connect through. I think it would have been an advantage to have it, and I think that the but I think, to be honest, opportunities were missed before our client site came along on the Redbridge scheme.
Could you go to 547 in your proof, which is page 31, I think. And so you accept there is a level of harm to not having it. So you said the level of benefit of choice is the principle of permeability. So I consider there's an element of harm of not having the western connection. However, I consider the harm limited in the context of the distance to services facilities if the improvement is available. So in short, we haven't lost that much because it didn't make that much difference in terms of distances to services facilities.
Yeah, basically what I'm saying there is there's no real benefit in terms of going west as opposed to east, and that's part of the reason why I say harm limited. Yeah.
But could you take up Mr. Price's proof? 7.7. You've got that?
I've got the proof, yeah.
Sorry, table 5.6 on page 30. Walking distances to local amenities. And we see there in the two right columns the difference between walking distances if the link had been provided and without the link. And what we can see from that is that in particular relation to the pharmacy, the hospital, convenience retail and the cafe, there would have been significant gains to be made in terms of distances saved.
In the round, there's differences. There's differences between different parts of the site, so you can't just sort of take it from the western end because it's looking specifically from the western end there. So what about the rest of the properties which would go east? There are some distances that are close. So I accept, but I don't think it's a material situation. It's sort of a material.
Well, I mean, so far as I'm happy to focus just on the western properties, I think, but it's a fair point to say that's not the same for the east. But the comparison's been drawn here. This is, if you look at the western end, this is how it's going to be different for you. If it had been provided, it's basically nearly double the distance to the pharmacy or the hospital, first of all, isn't it?
In factual terms, if you live in the most western property, it is. Trips to the pharmacy and hospital, well, certain hospital, one would hope would be relatively infrequent.
Yeah.
As I say, you can't deal with it on a sort of a micro level. You've got to make an assessment about it in the whole.
Yeah, but we have to look at this, and I'm saying that is clearly a material and significant difference in terms of distance. Double the distance has got to be significant, or a scale of 1 to 2 kilometres. That's a significant difference in terms of how attractive it is to put people to walk, isn't it?
Yeah, but as I say, you know, you apply it the other way around, and from the eastern side, and there's shorter routes coming from the east. So you have to look at it in the round. You have to look at sustainability in the round. And I mean, I think I make the point is, you know, if in my proof that if there was you know, a series of facilities immediately accessible from the west, then you know that might be a big point in the round. I'm extremely comfortable it does not affect the accessibility or sustainability of the scheme.
Okay, but can I just ask you specifically on this point? So then we go to convenience retail, and that will be Waterside Park.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the link. I mean, one of the main reasons provided is to be able to go to Waterside Park. That was the desirable, why it's desirable to have the link.
Well,
One of the main reasons.
it would be, I suppose it would just provide choice to people. You know, if people wanted to sort of access the western part to the site or vice versa.
But that increases by about 2/3 without the link, by 600 metres in absolute terms. Again, that's not a minimal or trivial difference. That's a material, potentially quite significant difference in terms of the attractiveness of what.
Yeah, but as I say, I don't think you can do it on that fine grained detail. As a whole assessment, I'm very comfortable that it's a sustainable and accessible location.
Thank you. So if I go back to the start of the cross-examination, the things there were lots of things we agreed on in relation to the MPPF. I asked you at the start whether you agreed that safety would be a reason for refusal, full stop, and you did. You agreed that's the appellant's position. But you said it would be more nuanced in the case of design. It would depend on. We go to MPPF, please, proceeding 5.5. In that, could you go to paragraph 139? I'll try this to say, it's on page 41.
Yeah,
And we see there, I mean, again, no, development that is not well designed should be refused, especially where it fails to take effect of local design policies and government guidance on design, taking into account the design guidance. The paragraph 139 is saying if the inspector concludes in favour of the council's case on design, planning permission should be refused, isn't it?
Paragraph 139 is saying that the development that is not well designed should be refused. So if the inspector comes to a judgment that it's not well designed, then that's clearly going to weigh heavily against the proposal of planning balance. But this isn't one of the footnotes of the tilted balance, for example, to be judged in that context.
Well, it's not, because it's you mean the policies that provide a clear reason for refusal, but that's because that's confined to policies which relate protect areas or assets of particular importance, isn't it? AYPs, the only things included in the footnote are areas, policies protecting areas or assets of importance.
Just tend to. I still think you need to balance the exercise to do just
I don't know, try and persuade you that the answer to the balancing exercise might be quite easy. So if you go to page 6, I think what you're referring to, we see the first Roman numeral D, paragraph 11.
Yeah.
Application of policies that protect areas or assets of particular importance provides. Seeing all this, they're all areas or assets, so it's heritage assets. Sites of and see what they are.
Well, yeah, I mean, if there was conclusion against design, it would fall in the adverse impacts of doing so significantly demonstrate the outweigh the benefits. And, you know,
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. But what I'd ask you to note as well is, apart from paragraph 114 on a 5 highways, which says refusal in the case of unsafe or severe impact, and paragraph 136 that we just looked at, development isn't well designed, should be refused. Framework only says in 4 other cases uses the word shouldn't be refused about anything other than about anything else. And I think 2 of those, or 3 of those, are areas or assets. So can I just take you through them? Because I need to put this to you as a minute. If you go first of all to paragraph 95. Yeah. So we see it there. Where an application fails to satisfy the sequential test or is likely to have a significant adverse effect on one of the considerations about 10 sentences, it should be refused. So it says it there.
you know,
So we see it there. We see it again in paragraph 183 about areas of outstanding natural beauty. Government should be refused. Permission should be refused. Spatial development, conceptual circumstances, etc.
yeah.
We see it also in 186A, habitats and diversity. Significant harm to biodiversity can't be avoided, mitigated or compensated for. Permission should be refused. And we see it also in 186C, loss of irreplaceable or deterioration of irreplaceable habitats, refused unless for fully exceptional reasons. But apart from those, the only other places are 115 highways, safety and severe impact, and 139 design. And what I want to put to you, that's quite indicative of when we go back to the start of the MQS, what it's saying is these are really fundamental issues in achieving sustainable development. And if you are not a safe development or you are not a well-designed development, then the very strong likelihood is that the adverse impacts of the development will outweigh the benefits. Is that not fair?
Well, first of all, it's safety. I think, you know, we've already had a discussion here on highway safety. On design, you know, I understand what you're saying about how policy, so how paragraph 139 is worded. It's a judgment in the planning balance depending on what harm is identified by the inspector in terms of design. Again, it's a theoretical point, but it's very difficult for me to say, oh yes, well that would definitely be a refusal of that.
Yeah, I just have one. Streets. And I'm going to keep it brief, because I think it's probably gone over it already. But I did say I'd come back to it, Mr. Dar, so I'm going to stick to it because I think it's fine. I just want to ask you this. First of all, the proper approach to interpreting planning policies, we interpret them in a straightforward, practical way, don't we? And it's fair to assume generally, isn't it, that when ordinary words are used in policy, they have their ordinary meaning, unless there's something in the context to tell us otherwise.
Yeah.
And the ordinary meaning of tree line is explained in the dictionary definition.
You did provide a dictionary definition, interpretation of that. I don't think it's massively clear.
No, I'm not going to go into the. I'm just going to make submissions on the end. It's a point of law, but I'm just going to say. I just wanted to see whether we can agree that the tree lines should be taken to have its ordinary meaning in paragraph 1, 6. Whatever that ordinary meaning may be, we seem to differ a bit on it. So it's not carrying any special meaning here.
Well, look, I mean, my interpretation of 136 is that it says decision should ensure that new streets are tree lined. I think our scheme is tree lined.
No, I know you do, and there's going to be a judgment call. It's not going to help me or you or be expected to sort of debate that because we're different about it. I think that what might help is then to agree that it carries its ordinary meaning, or whether it's or a special meaning. And I'm putting to you, it's clearly just its ordinary meaning. We seem to have slightly different understandings of that, and the inspector will have our own, and we can both make submissions on what it means. But where we agree it's the ordinary meaning that she should apply, whatever conclusion comes to.
Sorry, I don't really understand what the difference between ordinary and special meaning is.
Well, sometimes words can have a technical meaning in one context and an ordinary meaning, to the general public. And it's not that kind of case. Treeland is just an ordinary word that's found its way into the expression.
I would say it's a descriptive word.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rob.
Just a couple of points, Mark, but I'll just go through my stickers like I normally do and just take a moment and see which ones I might need to ask.
Whilst you're doing that, can I just check, obviously we went through the conditions the other day. Have I got that to
With tacitly, we've agreed the document. I suppose just to point us out that, for our discussion yesterday, just drafting an email which covers the two conditions in question, which was condition 3, and that was about whether or not we just stop work on site if contaminations found. So we're proposing something for that, and then we are proposing. We're going to do a note to you on the potential additional condition, which was about the gateway features. So there's going to be an email about that, and I'm very happy to just confirm within that we're happy to do commercial conditions.
that would help.
Yeah.
That would help if you can add that to that email,
Yeah.
and if you've got it to hand.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, no problem.
Just 3 points from me, Mark. Good afternoon, Mr. Bassett.
Hi.
A couple of short points. You were asked questions about the highway authority's position and whether they would do their case and whether there was still an issue on accessibility and so on and so forth. If you remember those questions, just help me with this. So you were here, weren't you, for the evidence of Mr. Carey and Mr. Price?
I was, yeah.
Yeah, those points were dealt with those witnesses, weren't they?
Yeah, comprehensively.
Yeah. Do you rely on Mr. Price's position?
I do,
Yeah. You were then asked some questions later on about Ashbourne being first tier outside the settlement boundary, things about no presumption in favour that if a site was on the edge of the settlement, it will automatically be sustainable. Do you remember those questions?
I do.
If we were an unallocated site inside of the settlement boundary, what would be the position? Would there be an automatic presumption that it was sustainable development?
No, you still need to go through the assessment.
Follow-up point in terms of the boundary, showing the distinction between the settlements and the countryside. I think Mrs. Ford was very clear in her evidence in chief that the housing policies of the plan were out of date. Just with respect to the 5-year supply point, insofar as there would be any conflict with the settlement boundary in this case, would that policy be out of date?
No.
Why not?
Because the policy expressly limits it.
That's everything I had for you. Thank you.
That concludes our inquiry. So what will happen next is we'll adjourn today Tuesday of next week, I'll be doing a site visit at a time in the afternoon. I'll go to the so it's necessary. Then on Wednesday, travelling home with a view to doing virtual meeting or something similar on the obligations, just going through the obligations and then hearing. Be happy to set up that for us.
Yes.
Yeah. So that just leaves the query. I was going to suggest 2 p.m. to do that, to kick off on the Tuesday. Does that work?
Yep.
Yes. 2 p.m. on Tuesday.
2 p.m. on, sorry,
Wednesday, because
it's bank holiday.
yeah, it's 30 days out, isn't it?
Yeah. 2 p.m. on the Wednesday then. Dual obligations and closings. But the costs to do, which we could do then, but we also said we could do it in writing. Did you have any views on that?
I think if we're doing obligations as well, I think it would be right.
Yeah, I agree.
It could go on
Yeah.
a little bit longer.
Yes, yeah, so I mean, I'm happy to agree a timetable.
Yeah, because obligation, let's say that takes an hour most, and then you might have an hour each. 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, you don't really want to be doing costs
As well, yeah.
Okay, so let's agree a timetable then for costs. I'm happy to do it in writing. Incidentally, will we can't speak me.
Can I come back and confirm?
Do you want to do that now? Just
Yeah,
you know
so
where we
exactly,
stand?
that's fine.
Yeah.
We're having short terms.
Yeah, sure. We'll come back in like 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Good. The lucky ones, dealt with within one.
Yeah, absolutely, one fell
No
swoop,
sort
yeah,
of
yeah.
hangover of a bit.
So it might be one of those people who fall looking
Do you think?
I'm gonna to Wakefield Council for a week on Tuesday, if I can have a proper chair. Yeah, 4 weeks and my body won't take it. It's just crazy. So honestly, I'm gonna have to start travelling with my own bus, my own bed, my own desk. It'd be great then, wouldn't it? I could do all sorts while I was on the move. If I just had a little RV to drive around in. Olga's on tour, stay on the side. I've never understood, why people don't ask for rail and just put it on the back. Oh, I don't know, maybe I need a Volvo XC90, but maybe the 40 cuts it at the moment. I have to get a big car, and that'll just lead to more headaches whenever I have to go into a city centre and try and park the damn thing. That's the problem, isn't it? So, right, if you know you're going to be in a car park like that. Yeah. Have you guys driven over this farming? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, right, okay. Yeah. So we're going to have a right conundrum, aren't we, trying to fit everything back in the car? It's like going to be like a Jenga puzzle or something like, hang on a minute. Yeah, what's going on? On the way down, why doesn't it fit on the way back? It's going to be one of those. Yeah. Jonathan is always home on a Friday during the day because he works from home on a Friday. Tom's got questions, so there's no point, pressing the button right this second. She'll be annoyed now, but
I'll say that I'm going to send it to Chester. Tuesday.
There's no point. Fingers crossed behind your back.
We don't have any.
I'm not sure is the honest answer. My issue is that I go straight from this into another inquiry.
So you'd like to get it dealt with?
Three on the bounce. So
Well,
I'm
actually,
thinking,
if you can submit it with.
I'm not sure. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure about that, but that's really achievable. I'm thinking Friday might be there. We just have an extra couple of days. Oh, steady on. Thinking Friday, just give me an extra couple of days.
There's no cross application.
Incidentally, you're happy about the time you've got to do your plating.
No,
I'm very happy
I've got
now. Usually it's overnight, so.
I've got the skeleton arm in the queue, so I get it wrong. But yeah, I am happy. There's no.
You've got
Yeah, exactly. Well, sort
restful.
of. Sort of.
I know.
4 days, Mum. Who needs a weekend for bank holiday? Yeah, I am absolutely mad. That's true.
Don't burn yourselves out.
So no, that's fine. So I was just I think the second meeting now we're just talking. You were suggesting a Friday from this obviously.
You submitted an outline of your costs.
Yeah.
There is an outline. I think I just need a little bit of time to cover, deal with events of the inquiry. So I think I did indicate that whether or, and I'll need to take instructions as well on what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. So I think if it's possible to have the extra 2 days, so obviously we close on Wednesday, submissions are done on Wednesday, and then Friday, any revised application comes in from us.
Yeah.
Then that would be very helpful for
So
my
like a final.
Yeah, final application will be on the 31st.
Yeah. Comments.
And then I'd ask for a week if that doesn't cause any problems.
So comments by the 7th.
Weirdly, I'm actually also sitting on a Monday of the week that follows. I know it's horrific. I can't remember his name in my head. But yeah, so if it comes to me on the 7th, I'm at inquiry the 10th, the 11th and the 12th. Get on a plane on the 13th because I'm running away to have a nice lie down for a week.
They have a nice life.
Yeah. Well, there's that too. But if I can, I'm sure I'll just get it done. So perhaps you just say about 12.
Can we not say the 5th for the council's comments? So 3 days.
I'm just checking. It's just again the same reason that I just wanted.
If we heard that it'd be more of a width, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
The reason I'm not saying this is this case is meant to be very complicated. It's coming to me, and that the deadline for the skeleton argument is the 6th. Basically, I'm away.
Yeah.
If well, can I say? If I can say with some understanding, I will aim for the 5th. But if it proves
That's a
problematic,
bit problematic.
yeah.
What about if I was being really mean and said the 30th for you and the 31st? Hang on, yeah, and then
I'll live with it, Mum. I'll do whatever we need to do to get it done.
new costs.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, I mean, I've got 3 days holiday with my children.
Oh,
So-
It's so,
okay, you look.
yeah, so, Mark, can I just look at that? It might be that it's, I mean, I'm happy to,
It is tricky.
I mean, it's, also the thing is that the reply from Ms. Hogley is going to be short because it's not going to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
But I take the point. So let me have a look. Can I say,
I'm happy to live with the 7th. I mean, my general approach when it comes to comments on replies is, if I can, is to say very little.
well, can I say I'll go for the 5th. I'll get it done. I'll get it done. Yeah, no, I'll get it done. Well,
That does sound a bit tricky. Well, so what date would you be saying? We've agreed the 31st and the 7th, let's try at the other end.
Yeah, so,
Because you're going away on holiday, how long?
well, no, don't. I'll just
Well,
get it
it's-
done
it's-
now before I go. So I will do it, and it will be, if I can have it until the 13th, then I will make sure that it's in on the 13th. So I finished the inquiry on the 12th.
Okay,
And
So back to 7th and back to,
Yeah, so seven for Mr. Hunter, and then any final reply from me is the 13th of June.
okay,
Thank you.
fine. So just to go that one more time, so Friday the 31st, you get your costs application, which
Yes,
is
ma'am.
the end of the week when we're closing.
Yeah.
Week after that, Friday the 7th, you get the notes from you, which you prepared with girls in case, and had the time off with your children. And then Friday the 13th, just before you go on holiday, if
Yeah.
you get any final comments.
Yeah, it's a Thursday, so I mean,
Sorry,
happily
Thursday.
I fly out in the afternoon, so I know that I at least have some time in the morning, if I can still think about that point after the next
Where are you
inquiry.
going? I always like to know.
Wakefield. Oh, I'm holiday. I'm going to Greece. Yeah, I'm going to Rhodes. You see, that's why I need a
that was
really
the most,
nice
I did
life.
that holiday.
If that's your response, you need a break.
Yeah,
That would have been a
exactly.
unique answer to that question. You're gonna get that again.
I thought I'd get a nice answer. Oh.
Oh,
Right, okay, lovely.
and I'm a bit of working.
No.
Would you need to fly there?
No. Well, I don't know, at the moment it's arguable. I could do with chocolate and milk. No,
No, and then, but they've had a good chance to air their side of the argument,
absolutely.
because from now on in, it's obligations and closing, so no opportunity.
So the list of attendees for Wednesday from yourself, just out of interest or potential.
Oh yes, of course, you mean for next Wednesday? Yes, of course, yeah, we'll get that to you, Mr. Robson, yeah, thank you.
Okay, all right, well, I think that's all then, so I'll see you all virtually next week. And thanks for your help, and helping me out, and just for your good nature and get to work the best I can do, I really do appreciate it.
We're coming on time, it's the main thing after some.
I would have believed it at the start.
Yeah, we've got better as we've gone along, but and likewise, Mark, thank you for how the inquiry's been run. It's certainly been very helpful from our perspective. Safe journey home,
Yeah,
everybody.
you as well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm going to Rhodes, and then I'm coming back,